What's up, everybody?
Welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 190. And today is so exciting because we have our first guest of 2022. None other than Miss Stephanie Harlowe is in the house, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
They're good.
They're
I'm
good?
going to answer for them. They're doing pretty good.
I think they're doing really
They're
great.
pretty chill.
I'm Stephanie Harlowe. I do true crime on YouTube under the channel Stephanie Harlowe, and I also have a true crime podcast that I co-host with retired police detective Derek Levasseur. Those episodes go up every Friday wherever you get your podcast. And we have a YouTube channel too, where you put those episodes on after, and they go up the Wednesday after the podcast goes out. So true crime all the time.
Yeah, and you guys
awesome.
go really in depth in cases. Like,
Yes.
you guys do
That's what you're known for.
multi-part
Yeah.
Deep dives.
Love it.
dives. So if
Yeah.
you want to get into the nitty-gritty of cases, Stephanie's where it's at for sure.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with context. So
Yeah.
it's like I have to know everything about it. And if that's what you like, then I think we'll have fun.
Yeah. And that's why we have her here today. And we chose a case that probably, would you say this is like the most well-known true crime case ever?
I think it's definitely top three. Yeah.
It has to be, right?
It's like Madeline McCann, JonBenét
Mhm.
Ramsey, Kaylee Anthony.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
I agree.
those
Those
three.
are definitely the top three. We wanted to get back into JonBenét Ramsey today because it is a Colorado case. Came all the way from New York. Thank you so much for
Of
coming all
course.
this way.
So nice here. Snowing.
Yeah, I know. I was like all nervous that because we got quite a bit of snow today. I was nervous that it'd be too cold for you, but you're from New York, pretty close
It's
to
like, this is
Canada.
nothing.
So
We get like 2 feet at a time. It was only like 4 inches, I think,
Yeah.
that we got here. It was
Mhm.
like a light dusting compared to
Very pretty.
up north.
yeah.
Yeah,
Very pretty.
it is. It's kind of pretty out when there's nice powder out there.
It's like you're living in a snow globe when you're inside
Yeah.
and cozy.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah.
I've been loving it.
Yeah, I get cold though. I get a little unprepared. I don't like driving in it either. Too
Oh,
much
I don't
anxiety.
drive. I don't drive in it. No, don't get it twisted. But it's pretty. And yeah, I'm always cold anyways, you know?
Yes, might as well be even more cold.
It's better to come here. When I went to Orlando a couple weeks ago and then I went home and then I was
Ooh.
even more cold than I was originally
You
because
get, like acclimated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get used to like 70-degree weather in Orlando or 75, whatever it is.
yeah.
Well,
Go
we're
home.
so excited to have you here today because we, like I said, we wanted to go over JonBenét Ramsey because Josh and I covered it in our very early days of podcasting.
Years ago.
It
Yeah.
was a mess, you guys. It was back before we used to edit or really prepare much before our shows. We would kind of just, well, because personally, I like podcasts that are very free flow. That's what I tend to listen to. So when we first started podcasting, we thought that'd kind of be the way we'd approach it. But it's very hard with true crime to do that. You really need structure, you know.
You need
editing.
to organize it in a way that makes sense and go
Yeah.
through it in a methodical way because there's just so much to, especially this case,
Yeah.
that you really need to have, every bit of it researched really well
Totally.
to put it all together
Yeah.
and sort of look at it as a whole. So
Because last time I just remember we kept repeating things. We'd go off on all these tangents. So we're going to be trying to be more organized today. And Stephanie has done several deep dives. You've done how many videos on your channel? And
I just did one video on my channel,
Just one, but it was
Derek and I
long.
did a 3-parter on JonBenét.
that's a lot. And how long are your episodes?
2 hours.
Wow. It's like
there's
almost
like 6 hours of
Well,
JonBenét.
we just did an 8-parter on Kaylee Anthony.
8?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like if we had done JonBenét now, when we're like more comfortable with each other and, more comfortable with the process, it would have been another
Longer.
8-parter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. We were talking about it before.
Yep.
There's so much in here. And even just the theories,
Mhm.
to talk about those theories, you could talk about those for hours.
Yep.
And
Just a
see how the
yep.
evidence fits.
Yeah, we were talking about it for at least an hour over lunch,
Mhm.
just kind of starting. So, yeah, there's a lot to go over here today. So, it's been a while since we've had a guest on the show, especially with our typical format of kind of going back and forth. So, be patient with us as we figure out,
Sort of the
flow
flow.
here.
Yeah,
Get
exactly.
back into it.
Yeah, it's going to be good, though. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts on this case. It's such an upsetting one,
Yes.
but it's such
It's really a
fascinating
horrific
case.
crime. I mean, it's like
It
Horrific.
is.
this poor girl. I
Mhm.
mean, just a horrific end to her life
Yeah.
and way, way too early, obviously, and just
Mhm.
no justice so far. And it's been years now. And
Yeah.
it's one of those cases that it just seems so crazy that it's not been solved yet and nobody's been prosecuted for the murder of JonBenét. And with DNA testing
Mhm.
and genetic, genealogy, and, like we've seen recently with Golden State Killer and other cases where, they're able to solve these cases with very little DNA, and still we don't have anything more on JonBenét. And obviously there's a lot more to that, which we'll get into.
It's almost unbelievable, right?
Yeah,
They
it
have so
really
much
is.
evidence,
Yeah.
but nothing to go on.
Still, still cold.
Yeah, right.
So
It makes you
weird.
think.
Yeah, makes you wonder.
We were discussing that earlier today. Will it ever actually be solved?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Mhm.
Do you think so?
I don't know. I mean, I think it ultimately comes down to the DNA, but then there's obviously issues with the DNA and there's issues with the control over the DNA as well. And what will it actually ever make it to, a lab that isn't controlled by the police department or some third party or something like that? So it's hard because sometimes cases are kind of locked down by the parties that sort of govern the case, right? And they don't always just allow things. It seems so simple. Well, why don't we send this DNA to every lab in the country and see and allow as many people to work on it as possible, have as many, people who specialize in genetics look at it, and that just doesn't happen. And it's like, why doesn't that happen? And that's when you start really getting into the weeds and looking at, okay, well, why are they not trying as hard as possible to solve this case? And then that's when you kind of can even get into some conspiracies and cover-ups and things like that. And you're like, okay, now it's starting to make sense why this is still a cold case after all these years, especially when it was such a high-profile case. I mean, this made international news when it happened. So,
it was, especially here in Colorado. We were kids when it happened, and I just remember people, discussing it all the time. Every time we go to the grocery store, the tabloids are just filled with them. And yeah, I mean, people were completely obsessed with it for years and still are to this day. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have your own opinions on it. We'll have to kind of go over everything today, and maybe you'll change your mind by the end.
I think we have some differing opinions here and some different ideas of what might have happened. And so I think this is going to be a really interesting episode. I'm really looking forward to
I think so too.
To hearing all of our thoughts on this. Obviously, we're going to start with JonBenét and her background and take a look at sort of her life leading up to her death. So let's go ahead and get into that. But this episode of Mile Higher Podcast is actually brought to you by Curology, HelloFresh, ExpressVPN, Babbel, and the Pill Club, and more on that later. But let's go ahead and dive into the background of JonBenét Ramsey.
Okay, so JonBenét Patricia Ramsey was born on August 5th, 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia, to her parents, John and Patsy Ramsey.
What do you think about the fact that her name is JonBenét and they used John's name?
And his last name, Bennett.
Yep.
Yeah. Or his middle name. Isn't that his middle name?
Yeah, his middle
John
name.
Bennett.
Yeah.
So I talked about that in my YouTube video, and I said I thought it was a little narcissistic, and I got a lot of pushback. People are like, no.
I think it is.
I think it is, yeah.
I think it's kind of odd.
Especially because he already had a son from his first marriage, John Jr. So maybe that's just a thing that they like to do.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I don't know. But Burke has no names from John or Patsy.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. That's kind of strange.
And he was the firstborn and the son, which is the typical.
So why
pattern.
her then?
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that? Just
they should have used Patrick or something from Patsy. Or I guess that's probably where they got Patricia from, Patsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So her middle name is her mother.
Yeah.
And Burke's just over here
alone.
No one cares about you, Burke.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it seems.
Well, no offense to anybody out there who is named after their parents, who has named their kids after their parents. We're not talking about you. We love you so much.
Yeah, so much.
So JonBenét's mother, Patricia, aka Patsy Ann Ramsey, she was a former beauty pageant queen, Miss West Virginia. But she wasn't just pretty face. She was smart too. She actually got a journalism degree from WVU. That's, what is that, West Virginia University?
Yeah.
Yeah. And JonBenét's father was a businessman named JonBenét Ramsey. John graduated from the University of Michigan, and he served in the U.S. Navy for 11 years. And there was a little bit of an age gap between Patsy and John, right? Patsy was 14 years younger than John, and she was his second wife. She was 23 when they got married in 1980, and John had 3 kids from his previous marriage, John Andrew, Beth, and Melinda. But sadly, in 1992, his daughter Beth was killed in a car accident at the age of 22. This does get left out a lot of the times in the retelling of JonBenét's story, because what we have to realize here is John Ramsey lost 2 daughters. And you usually don't see that. It's bad enough as a parent to lose one child in your lifetime. To have to bury 2 children,
terrible.
It has to be hard. Yeah. John admitted to the police in 1997 that he cheated on his previous wife, Lucinda, in the late 70s with one of his secretaries, and he said he regretted it. Don't they always regret it?
Of course.
They're always sad about it once they get caught. And John and Lucinda, they got divorced in 1978, but he reported that there was no infidelity from either him or Patsy in their marriage. Once again, don't they always say that?
Yeah.
So JonBenét's brother, Burke Ramsey, was born in 1987. He was 9 years old at the time of JonBenét's murder. Burke was more of an introverted, kind of withdrawn child, pretty shy. John started Advanced Product Group in 1989, and the company later merged with 2 other companies to form Access Graphics, a computer service company. And he became the CEO and president of that company. And the Boulder Chamber of Commerce named him Entrepreneur of the Year in 1996 after the company grossed $1 billion. JonBenét was born in 1990, and shortly after she was born, the family moved to Boulder, Colorado for John's work. Melinda and John Andrew had rooms in the Ramsey family home as well. So Patsy Ramsey was really big into the pageant scene, and she had entered JonBenét in beauty contests ever since she was a child. She won her first pageant at 4 years old and won 5 more over the next 2 years. She competed in many more as well. She was just naturally beautiful and a really charming little girl. JonBenét was kind of like Patsy's living doll. She was definitely living vicariously through her daughter and her pageant life. And she'd sometimes even bleach JonBenét's hair to make her look blonder.
And she's not that old there. She looks like she could be 11 or 12.
Yeah, that's the kind of creepy thing to me about pageantry is like you're aging your child from a child to look like a grown adult. Like
that's what I'm saying. It's creepy.
Yeah.
You're putting your child in front of adults to be judged based on their physical appearance. And people say, oh, there's talent portions. Okay, great. Then don't do a physical appearance portion.
Take all that out and just make it a talent show.
They're a child. They're developing their self-esteem. They're developing their self-confidence. And they're not going to do that by parading in front of adults and getting like numbers thrown up about how good they look. It's so disturbing.
I can't even imagine the psychiatric effects of going through something like that as a kid. So a childhood friend of JonBenét said that once she asked JonBenét about all the fancy crowns that she had in her room. And JonBenét explained that they were from beauty pageants, but she told the friend that they were more like her mom's crowns. So that tells you really all you need to know right there. John really didn't like that his daughter was competing in all these pageants at her young age, but he was so busy with work that he let Patsy manage the kids. And outside of pageants, JonBenét was a normal little girl. She was kind of like a tomboy who liked to play outside, get messy, and ride her bike.
If you look at pictures of her without makeup on, she looks like a different child.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
She's obviously gorgeous, whichever way you look at her, but she looks like a completely different child. She looks fresh-faced,
really does.
healthy. She looks like a kid that loves to play outside and, a skin knee wouldn't bother her. And then the makeup pictures, she looks like you said, like a little China doll, a little fragile doll that needs to be handled with care.
JonBenét was known as a kind, extroverted, and beautiful little girl, and everyone was insanely captivated by her natural charm and grace. The Ramsey family overall was kind of picture perfect. The kids were attractive and well-behaved. The family was wealthy. John was successful and his wife was young and attractive. They had a nice house, a really nice house on 15th Street in the Upper University Hill neighborhood in Boulder.
The front of the home makes the house look much smaller than it is. It is a massive home, 7,000 square feet.
Ooh.
The size comes from its length and height. It stretches back and upward on the lot. There are 4 floors in this home. JonBenét's body was found in this corner of the basement of the home. Her bedroom is here on the 2nd floor. This is the balcony outside her bedroom. Inside,
wow,
it is all white. It was a very colorful room with wall hangings, toys, stuffed animals, a bright-colored bedspread. This is JonBenét's bathroom.
God, it's
Next
huge.
to the bathroom is the door leading directly from her bedroom to the balcony.
Beautiful.
To give you some perspective, JonBenét's bedroom is behind and above me. On the other end of the house is her brother Burke's bedroom. Above Burke's bedroom is where her parents' bed was.
So she was all alone on that side of the house, essentially, from the way I understood it.
Yeah.
John and Patsy had like the entire top floor, but their bedroom, like almost as a master suite, but their bedroom was on the one side over Burke's. So JonBenét, the youngest, is all the way at the other end of that ginormous house by herself.
Yeah, and with that balcony, I'd be freaked out having my kid in there
Absolutely alone.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Who needs that big of a house with just 2 kids too?
I know. It's a good point. Because, the other older ones would come sometimes stay there, but
They can sleep on the couch like normal people. They don't need their own bedrooms because they're there
Seriously.
once a year.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
well, when you got that much money and you own $1 billion company,
Ew.
you just spare no
Well,
expense.
it's like it's status too. It's just like
Oh, yeah.
it's a way to portray to the world and neighborhood that, this is the Ramsey's house.
Yep.
Look how successful we are. And,
Boulder
we're so
also
successful. Yeah.
is a very
It is.
rich. Well, I mean, there's areas that are very wealthy, very like high class. A lot of people have like houses in the mountains there and stuff.
Yeah, definitely certain communities because there's definitely a more chill, hippie community there as well.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Like, she's so young. I want my kids to be very close to me.
Yeah.
Like my 5-year-old sleeps in.
Oh, that's how we're going to be.
Yeah, my 5-year-old sleeps in the bed with us. And it makes me nervous when she's in her bedroom, which is just like one flight up and with the other 2 kids right with her. And so I like to keep her close. To have her on the other side of the house and a balcony off her bed and her own like bathroom where, you see that bathroom? That's an accident waiting to happen for a little girl. Marble all over.
Oh, seriously.
She could fall, crack her head. You wouldn't even hear her crying. You wouldn't know until you went looking for her.
Yeah.
So you're placing status and money over having your family close together and safe and protected.
It's interesting you said that. That kind of gave me a thought.
Right? Me too, as soon as I said it.
Yeah. I know we're like sharing a brain right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll continue.
Well, the house is like it's called a Tudor style house. So it's like there's multiple staircases. It's very chopped up. I mean, again, it's 4 floors. I mean,
It's hard to keep track of your kids in that.
Yeah. I mean, they don't really make houses with 4 floors anymore. It's more, you have a basement, a main level, and then a second level, but it's really 2 stories when you think about it versus 3 stories. So it's just that much more space and separation between, your children. And I mean, it'd be one thing if they had like 8 kids or something like that, where they needed, like you said, Stephanie, you need all of those bedrooms in that room. But again, it's just two young children in this big old house.
And look how big it is. You guys decorate for Christmas, right? Like your house?
Yeah. I mean,
but it's hard because
we will
you're
look
like,
more when we have a kid.
Yeah, but you're like, oh, this is like, who has all this? Patsy put a Christmas tree in every single room.
She did. Yep.
Yeah,
Every
there's a
room was
clip of it,
decorated.
actually.
All of those rooms on all of the floors, all decorated. Like you need a hobby.
Yep.
Right.
That
Well,
boy.
Clearly shouldn't have one.
it's classic like housewives situation, like all those shows. That's their main focus in their life is like decorating their house, having the coolest party, which family is
really
going to
all
have
about
the
that
most
lifestyle.
decorated, lavish parties.
Yeah.
And that's really important to them.
And what do you win? What do you gain from that?
Guess notoriety.
Jealousy from the other wives?
Yeah. Probably. Well, it's like, it reminds me of the Grinch. Betty! Hi! So anyway, like we were saying, Patsy was a housewife who loved throwing really elaborate parties and socializing. The house was beautifully decorated and always in order. She was very well put together herself, always had beautiful hair, manicured nails, and perfect makeup. So let's see what their Christmas morning looked like in 1994 and 1993.
1994.
I think the sound cuts out for this one.
Okay.
Like
What'd you
often.
get, JonBenét? Oh.
So cute.
I know. Yeah, their house is very like done up.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like it's out of a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like that's not real. Patsy would have loved Instagram, man.
Oh, yeah. She would have thrived on that.
Pinterest.
Yeah, Pinterest
Who's
mom.
that?
Wow, look at that doll. Life size.
She's like, you can't just make cupcakes for your kid. You have to make cupcakes with like houses and peacocks on top of them.
Right.
Oh my, a little Barbie Lamborghini.
Awesome.
Oh,
She's
so
so
cute.
cute.
She's so cute.
Adorable.
It's sad to watch this.
Woo.
They really got it all, man.
Yeah, they
really
do.
had all
Getting
the,
those cards, especially back then, those expensive stuff.
sounds like John is the one recording potentially, or is John even in this clip?
I don't know.
I'm guessing he's
I'm
recording,
assuming
yeah.
he's home for Christmas, right?
Yeah.
You'd
She
think
probably
that-
hires
It's
someone to
him
record
recording.
their Christmas morning videos. She got like a professional like videographer
Yeah.
come over
Yeah,
in the
wouldn't be
morning.
surprising.
Make sure you get my good side, Jack.
Oh yeah, here's their Christmas greeting. This is always interesting to
this is
watch.
fun,
It's so
yeah.
perfect.
Hello, I'm Patsy Ramsey. Daddy's not here, but this is JonBenét. She's 4,
Daddy's never
Bertha's
there.
7, and we'd like to welcome you to our home and wish you a very Merry Christmas.
Yo, that's a train track around. Did you see the train track around the tree?
Yep.
They have a train going around their tree.
Yep. The classic
What's up with like the gremlin Santa sitting on the chair?
Gremlin Santa. I didn't see
Did you
that.
see
There
the,
was the Santa like climbing the little ladder though.
No, in the
Have a-
chair though.
Oh,
if
really?
you yeah,
Go
look
back
at
to
the
that.
like I just am so weirded out by this giant Santa like
Hello,
what
I'm
what is
Kendall.
that
Oh,
thing?
man.
That's
That's-
horrifying.
that's-
It looks like the Grinch in Santa form.
He's
Like,
standing in for Daddy.
That's John
Looks like
Ramsey's
the
great
scary
day.
face.
And wish
It's like, this is John. What?
Yeah, that's weird.
I mean, he
looking.
probably did as much as John did when he was home, sat in a chair and said nothing and wished he wasn't there. So
who
accurate.
was filming that? Do you think she set up a tripod?
She definitely set up a tripod.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way.
Mm-hmm.
So John is not there on Christmas.
John
No.
worked a lot.
Yeah, he's making the money because they had 2 private planes, a vacation home in Michigan, and a yacht. John was a pilot and he flew planes often. So, of course, he loved to have all of these toys. So John and Patsy also had gardeners, nannies, and housekeepers. So their monthly payroll was getting pretty big there. And one of the housekeepers was a woman named Linda Hoffman. Patsy was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer in 1993, and she went into remission after treatment for that.
But in 1993, JonBenét's toileting and eating habits started to worsen. She was wetting the bed, and this drove Patsy crazy. Linda wrote that Patsy would sometimes take JonBenét in the bathroom to punish her for bedwetting, which I'm just like, why'd she get so mad about bedwetting? Like, they have maids there and stuff to like clean the sheets.
That's
and
a
stuff.
good point.
Regardless of that, it's the kid can't help it.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
pretty normal
Like
behavior.
you
Like,
don't need a lot of brain cells to understand that, like, obviously the child would not be wetting their bed if they could help it. They don't want to do that.
No.
It's an unconscious thing. And it usually signals stress in that child's life, something going on in the child's life,
Yeah, I was going to say.
or a medical condition,
Right.
which I'm pretty sure a pediatrician later ruled out a medical reason for her urinating in the bed. So what kind of stress was this little girl going through in her life? And I can't stand parents that get mad at their kids for wetting the bed. I want to punch them
It's
in their
bullshit.
faces. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'd imagine all the stress that she was going through just for the pageants.
And now
You know?
she's scared because every time she wets the bed, she's scared she's going to get in trouble for it, instead of having an accepting mother who opens her arms and said, "It's okay, honey. Like, that happens to all of us, you know?"
Yeah.
That's what JonBenét needed.
It's so sad thinking about what she went through.
Yeah.
Like, what her short life was actually like.
Well, and Burke also had a problem with bedwetting as well as fecal smearing.
Mm-hmm.
A former housekeeper reported that once during Patsy's bout with cancer, Burke smeared feces on the walls of the bathroom. And once Linda found fecal matter the size of a grapefruit in JonBenét's bed, and it was unclear whose feces it was. Linda, their stepsister, also apparently had issues with bedwetting when she was a child. So it's possible that the bedwetting was a genetic issue, but like Stephanie said, most likely it was probably due to some sort of stress or other thing going on.
They're both living in the same home.
yeah,
so.
if you look at the common denominator between these 3 kids who had problems with bedwetting, it's the parents.
Yep.
I mean, not with Melinda, obviously, but John.
I'm not saying bedwetting is always because of the parents. Obviously, there's several other factors that can contribute to that. But it's interesting to note here, considering their lifestyle.
Exactly. But let's look at JonBenét's medical history here for a second. So in July 1993, this was when Patsy was diagnosed with cancer. And this was when the doctor noted that JonBenét was regressing in toilet and eating habits. On December 31st, 1993, JonBenét was still drinking from a bottle. Her parents had trouble weaning her off. And then in September 1994, JonBenét had a bladder infection with vaginal discharge. She was diagnosed with vaginitis and given amoxicillin. JonBenét was also having repeated infections and illnesses of the sinus, and her symptoms included coughing, congestion, fatigue, poor sleep, and grouchiness, diarrhea, rashes, and low appetite. And the doctor suggested fifth disease, which is a common childhood illness.
I don't know anything about that. Do you?
Yeah, fifth disease. It usually comes with rash. Yep, the rash is usually the first thing you'll notice in kids. But yeah, it's all these other symptoms though. I don't know about that. Probably, but did they suggest it or did they diagnose it? Like, if you're a doctor, you shouldn't be suggesting. It's not like online. You should be telling me whether my child has this or not, right?
Maybe they just brought it up and then they never went further to actually
they never
confirm.
followed up.
Yeah.
So sometime before October 1994, Burke apparently hit JonBenét with a golf club. And apparently this was an accident, but the injury left a scar on her cheek. And a week after the accident, the family consulted a plastic surgeon about JonBenét's injury. And at the time, JonBenét was still wearing pull-ups at night for bedwetting. Okay, so now we're going to jump forward from 1994 to now 1996 on Christmas morning when the murder happened. But before we get into that, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. If you've never heard of Curology, then listen up. Curology is game-changing custom skincare made for you by a dermatology provider. They'll create a custom prescription cream for your specific goals, whether that's tackling acne, clogged pores, skin texture, dark spots, fine lines, or something else. You start by taking a short online skin quiz and uploading photos, and if it's a good fit, they'll ship you your formula right to your door. It even has your name on the bottle. Curology literally makes you a custom prescription formula. No two breakouts are exactly alike, so target your skin's unique triggers with a custom formula made just for you from proven prescription ingredients. The convenience of Curology is great. There's no more getting lost in the skincare aisle guessing what will work for you. Curology takes the pain out of finding the right products by sending you a full dermatologist design routine, a cleanser, moisturizer, and a custom formula made for your goals. Your skin changes, so your product should keep up with your evolving skin. Curology actually checks in to see how you're doing, and they can adjust the ingredients in your formula if needed to get you to your goals. You can always shoot your provider a message anytime you have questions or you'd like changes made to your treatment, which is awesome. So elevate your skincare routine today and get started with Curology just like we did with a free 30-day trial at Curology.com/milehigher and just pay $5 for shipping and handling. That's CUROLOGY.com/milehigher to start your free 30-day trial. You can cancel anytime and prescription is subject to consultation.
Guys, let me tell you about one of my favorite sponsors, and that is HelloFresh. HelloFresh delivers pre-portioned ingredients right to your door, including farm fresh produce that arrives within a week, so you get convenience without skimping on the quality. So skip the trip to the grocery store because everyone knows that sucks, and it'll save you time waiting in that long line and ensure that you won't waste your money on excess food. We love HelloFresh because they have a huge variety of meals and you never have to repeat meals, of course, unless you like them. HelloFresh offers 50 weekly recipes, including a range of flavors, cuisines, and ingredients, so you'll never get bored and you can try something new every week. HelloFresh offers the flexibility that you need with customizable orders every week. And you can even skip a week whenever you need to. You can add extra proteins, sides, and change up the serving size whenever you have guests or just want to double up on your favorite recipes. And we love HelloFresh because they give back. HelloFresh has already donated over 4 million meals to charity in 2020, and now they're stepping up food donations to local communities amid the food insecurity crisis and pandemic. You guys got to check it out if you haven't already. All you got to do is go to HelloFresh.com/milehigher16 and use code milehigher16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That's HelloFresh.com/milehigher16. Use code milehigher16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts.
So on Christmas morning, 1996, the Ramsey family opened presents at their house. Around 5 or 6 p.m., the Ramseys, they went to family friends. They went to the home of family friends, Priscilla and Fleet White. They went there for a Christmas party. They brought the kids. And, it was a pretty normal party. JonBenét and Burke played with the White's children, and Fleet, Priscilla, John, and Patsy, they sat around talking like a normal Christmas party. Mm-hmm. The Ramseys returned home from the White's Christmas party at around 10 p.m. They put the kids to bed shortly after, and then Patsy and John went to bed at around 10:30 p.m. Now, it's funny because this small detail does pop up constantly, where some sources, and I think it's John Ramsey's retelling of it, he told some people later that JonBenét fell asleep in the car and then he carried her in and put her to bed, but he told other people and other sources that she was awake. They went into bed, he got her ready for bed and read her a bedtime story before coming downstairs. So I know it's something small, but it does show a slight inconsistency in the retelling of what happened that night.
Yeah, especially if this is your last night with your child, you'd think you'd remember it.
You really would, yeah. Burke admitted that he had snuck downstairs to play with his toys that night. He told this to Dr. Phil in the later infamous interview, and it's unknown when he returned to his room. But at some point between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. that night, JonBenét had eaten some pineapple from the Ramsey house. And, this is another thing, because there was pineapple at the Ramsey house, but there was also pineapple, Fleet White believed, in the fruit cocktail they had served at their house for Christmas. So once again, it's not really clear where she ate the pineapple, but we do know that later when she is found dead, it's in her stomach and not very well digested. So it should have been quickly before her.
Seemed like recent.
Yeah.
And that was a favorite snack of theirs too, right? Pineapple and milk.
Yeah, definitely Burke. Burke loved his pineapple and milk.
It's so random. I had never heard of that before, but it honestly sounds kind of good.
Some medical investigators reported that the pineapple would have been consumed 1.5 to 2 hours before she was strangled and killed. Mm-hmm. And this pineapple was matched by investigators to a bowl of pineapple found in the Ramsey kitchen. So when they all got up the next morning, there was still a bowl of pineapple on the counter, and there was also a glass of iced tea. So whoever had eaten the night before, and it's still unclear who had eaten the pineapple the night before. Whoever ate it just kind of left it there, which to me doesn't suggest it was one of the adults.
Yeah.
Right.
Because they'd probably know.
Or they put it in the dishwasher or something when they were finished. They wouldn't just leave it out.
Them, of all people.
I mean, not me. I would definitely leave it on the counter all night.
Or maybe they were used to just leaving stuff out because the house cleaner normally takes care of it and she was probably off for Christmas.
Yeah. That's possible.
See, that's the thing is there's so many bits that you just wonder about because they didn't give the full story.
Well, and because they didn't talk to police afterwards. They made them wait for months. And by that time, even their recollections of that night are going to be so foggy.
Which is understandable.
At some point between 11 p.m. and around 12 midnight that night, JonBenét suffered a massive blow to her head. Between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m., JonBenét was sexually assaulted, and it's estimated that JonBenét died due to strangulation at around 1 a.m. But the family reported that they had slept through the night. John said that he took melatonin that night. Nobody in the house reported hearing any disturbances. Nobody heard any screams. But once again, as we've already covered, JonBenét is on the opposite side of the house from all her other family. And I think it would be probably more impactful if we could go to that house and walk through it to show you that it's a big house and it's quite a hike from one end to the other. So even if something had happened, they probably wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So how it seems it happened, from what I remember, Patsy wakes up. They're going to Michigan, right? To their house there.
Yeah.
She loved that house in Michigan. She said it was the most lovely place in the world. They're taking their private plane to Michigan.
What a life.
What a life, exactly. You don't have to go through airport security. Come on.
Oh, that would be nice.
So she gets up and she actually dressed in the same clothes she'd had on the night before, according to Patsy. She had taken off this pair of black velvet pants and the red sweater, and she kind of put them over the bathtub before she went to bed the night before. She woke up, put those same clothes on. Now, there's 2 staircases in this house, right? There's one staircase that's like the main staircase, and then there's a spiral one that's kind of like the back staircase. And this was the one that Patsy would always take to go downstairs in the morning because it led to the kitchen, and that was the first thing she would do in the morning, make coffee. Yeah. So Patsy's going down the spiral staircase to make the coffee, and that's when she claims she saw a note on the stairs. And she's like, what is this note? And it was addressed to John Ramsey. Now, Patsy said initially she thought that this might have been a note from their housekeeper who had off for Christmas.
Yeah.
Apparently, the housekeeper had asked to borrow some money just the past week. And so Patsy thought, well, maybe this is, a note to John telling him when the money's coming, or maybe this is the money. So she opened it and she found this ransom note. And that's when she woke up John. She yelled, John, go check JonBenét's room. John went to go check JonBenét's room. JonBenét wasn't there, but Burke was still in his room sleeping soundly, according to her parents. But I mean, also we have to remember, like, these people told so many different stories.
Yeah.
They went in for their first police interview, right? And they talked to the police like the day that JonBenét was missing.
Day of.
And then when they went in for their next one months later, they actually asked for a copy of their initial reports to the police so that they would know what they had said initially, so that their stories wouldn't change that much. And I think that's very suspicious.
Oh, it's very suspicious.
Yeah. So this is a very long ransom note, guys. It's probably the longest ransom note I've ever seen in my life.
But it's very important to this case.
Very important. But it's on 3 sheets of paper.
Yeah.
So somebody took the time to write a ransom note on 3 sheets of paper.
In their home, too.
Yeah, with a bunch of details that's really not needed, right?
Yeah.
So it says, Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed. And if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate sized attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence a earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You're not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good Southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. And then it's signed, Victory, SBTC. So there's a lot to unpack here.
A lot.
Yeah.
That's the wildest ransom note I've ever heard.
It is. It's so lengthy.
The first thing that jumps out to me is the attaché. Because it's like, that's such a random word to throw in there, and that's like French origin. But I don't know. It's
Why can't
weird.
you just say bag?
Yeah. It's like,
because they're trying to make them seem like they're a foreign faction.
group. Yeah. And why, in what world is like a French foreign faction kidnapping people? I don't know.
You know
It just makes no sense.
what world? Movies.
Yeah.
Movies.
Yep.
Which whoever wrote this
Sounds
watched
like a
a lot
movie.
of them. Spy
Yep.
movies.
Yep. And Ransom had just come out.
Ransom with Mel Gibson came out just the month before this happened.
Yeah. Sounds a lot like that for sure.
But I mean, this doesn't make a lot of sense, like the time. The amount of money, we'll talk about that later. But it says, I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting. I advise you be well rested. The letter was left after the entire family was asleep, right?
Yeah. So
How are they
How are they
expecting
gonna
them to
know?
get the money by 8 to 10 a.m.?
And how are they expecting them to be well rested or follow the instructions of being well rested when they're not even going to get the letter until they wake up?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. It's extremely weird.
And whoever's writing the letter, we're a small foreign faction, but they go back and forth between saying follow our instructions and follow my instructions. They go back and forth between talking like in a group and talking in an individual, which lets me know that this is no group. This is an individual who just keeps forgetting they're supposed to be part of a group.
And what type of foreign faction or professional group would be writing this in the home on the day?
And asking
It
for
just
only
makes no sense.
$118,000.
Yeah, which is
If
very
you're going to go
strange,
through all
very
that trouble,
specific
you'd think
amount.
you'd be trying to get as much money from John as possible.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of it because like you said, his business earnings, that's all public knowledge.
Right.
Right.
You don't know exactly how much is in his bank account, but if you do the math, you figure he's
At least
ahead of-
millions.
Yes.
Yep.
He's got at least a few mil that he could spare. I mean, 100,000 for him would be like change. That's just like spare change to him. So
Yeah. Their personal banker told the police earlier, like $118,000 is a drop compared to what John Ramsey has in the bank.
Yep.
why go to such great lengths to kidnap his daughter for $100,000? It just doesn't add up at all.
No.
It doesn't make any logical sense from even a criminal's perspective. Like, why would you go through such great risk for $100,000 when if you're smart, that this guy has millions of dollars?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Plus, it's such a specific number, and we know that was the exact number of his bonus.
And
yeah,
like
John Ramsey's bonus. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, Stephanie, with the movie references, I mean, it just seems like
It really does.
if we catch you talking to a stray dog, he dies.
Yeah.
Stray
Like
dog.
what?
Yeah.
Who even would
So
say
odd.
something like that?
It's like a Dick Tracy kind of thing. You hear? If you catch her talking, like an old gangster movie
Totally.
kind of. And it's odd. And the last paragraph, it's like this personal attack kind of like, don't try to grow a brain, John. You're not the only fat cat. Like, who talks like
Fat
that?
cat,
Who talks like that? Definitely no foreign factions are talking like fat cat.
No, using
know.
that type of like lingo.
Vernacular, no. And then use that good Southern common sense of yours.
Yeah.
So somebody knows he's from Atlanta. And yes, that's probably publicly available, but the amount of his bonus wasn't publicly available.
No, it wasn't. And it's pretty creatively written, for having to rush this note while the family is asleep and you're in the house. Just doesn't make any sense.
But does it sound genuine? No.
No.
Right. It sounds like somebody was like, how would a gangster murderer foreign faction talk in the most cartoonish, exaggerated way possible?
That's exactly what it sounds like.
A real foreign faction who's legit enough to be scanning you for electronic devices and monitoring your house to make sure you don't make any calls. They're going to write 3 sentences. We have your daughter.
Yeah.
We want $118,000. they do it.
And they're
Bye.
going to write that shit in advance. They're not going to do it at their house the day of. It makes no sense.
And they're not going to leave a letter. They usually call and be like, yo, we got her. You know,
That's a good point,
What's
too.
leaving a letter? Handwritten on top of that.
Yep.
Handwritten. It's not to, 2022, but it's 1990, what, 6, 8? They have computers and typewriters.
6. Yep.
Yeah. And the asking for the $100,000 and $100 bills, but then the remaining $18,000 and $20 bills. What does that even mean?
No reason to do that.
That's just like so extra to put that in there that it's unbelievable. Like it's just completely unbelievable. This note makes no sense whatsoever.
That's what I'm saying. And that's why, we were talking about the theories earlier. And I was like, I could follow you down the path of any theory, but this note will always come back to me and be the one thing that sticks out and prevents me from really thinking like, some random like murderer, some random pedophile. They're not going to do this. They don't care. That's not their goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Their goal, they've already completed it.
Right.
No, I completely agree. So Patsy ran up to JonBenét's room after she found the note and saw that she was gone. And of course, she started panicking and screaming as any mother would. Then she checked on Burke, who apparently hadn't been woken up by her screaming. And the Ramsey said that he continued to sleep in his room while his mother went back downstairs. Burke, on the other hand, says that he woke up to his mom running around the room saying, "Where's my baby?" And he did not leave his room after she left. So he was awake at that point. We know this from the Dr. Phil interview. We can't use Dr. Phil because he's really tight on the copyright, but it's a pretty interesting interview if you haven't seen it. I think it's pretty telling.
So let me ask you guys a question. You're about to become parents.
Yes.
If you get a note like this and the note's like, do not call 911 or we're going to kill your daughter. Are you calling 911?
Yes.
Really?
I don't know. Now that I really think about it.
No, I'm thinking about it for a while before I just jump on the phone and
I
call
think my
911.
first thought would be 2, but then I'd probably have a second thought.
You'd have a conversation with your husband at least, right?
Yeah.
So
no, that's true. At least I would. I would go to Josh and be like, what should we do? Yeah.
So look, it says 5:52 a.m. 911's called.
Yep.
Patsy woke up a little bit after 5. This is enough time to find the note, run around screaming in Burke's room, realize JonBenét's not there, and have a conversation with John about whether or not you think it's a good idea to call the police, even though these people said they were going to kill your kid if you did.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
It's fast.
Yeah, she
There's
made
no
that
conversation
decision very quickly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you think about it too, it's 5 o'clock. Like they said, they're going to call between 8 and 10. So I feel like it's a short enough window where you're like, okay, like I don't want to take my chances. Let's see if this call comes. Let's see what they want.
Yeah.
And then if nothing happens or they're messing with me, then I'll bring in the authorities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, let's go ahead and play the 911 call.
911 emergency. Police. What's going on? 515th Street. What's going on there, ma'am? We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please. Explain to me what's going on, okay? There's a note left and our daughter's gone. A note was left and your daughter is gone? How old is your daughter? 6 years old. She's gone. 6 years old. How long ago was this? I don't know. I just found the note. And my daughter's gone. Does it say who took her? What? Does it say who took her? I don't know. There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says SBTC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Ramsey? I'm the mother. Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Please. Do you know how long she's been gone? No, I don't. Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, come. There's somebody. I am, honey. Please. Take a deep breath, please. Okay? Hurry. Patsy.
Which I'm going to be fair to Patsy. Like I've called 911 before, and it is a little annoying because they keep asking you questions and they're not very vocal sometimes that they've already sent authorities your way. So you're thinking like, you keep asking me questions like I need to know help's on the way. They should say like, okay, I've sent somebody out, but I just have some more questions for you, so you know someone's coming. Yeah. So I've wanted to hang up on 911 operators before sometimes because I'm like, all right, now I need to deal with this situation here. Someone's on the way.
You're keeping me from doing other things. Yeah. And of course, your brain's moving so fast that I've heard that in so many different 911 calls. And some people will say, I've sent help now, let me keep asking these questions.
That's how it should be.
Do you think it's weird she didn't disclose more information about the ransom note?
So weird.
She doesn't say anything but that it's signed by SBTC.
Yeah.
And at the end, but
Victory.
it's like, yeah, it's like you wouldn't fail to mention that they are going to kill my daughter.
Yeah. They said they're
if
going to
if they don't get their money by 8
and
to 10
they told me
a.m.
not to
like,
call the police.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
strange.
Why wouldn't you be like, you like more urgency?
Yeah.
Like, you guys need to get here now or anything else besides what she said. She's just like, help me.
I agree. And I don't know if this is nitpicking, but I also thought it was strange that she said, I just found the ransom note.
Yes.
Instead of saying a ransom note.
Agree.
I found a ransom note and it's 3 pages long and they're saying all this crazy shit in it. Yeah,
That's very
odd.
important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very weird.
And it's weird that I don't know. It's just, I think at one point she said, I'm the child's mother or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's depersonalization. That's kind of language that's very weird. Like,
I agree.
Your child's missing. And then she's like, well, she's sick, she's blonde. Like, who cares right now? She's not asking you about that. She needs to know that somebody kidnapped your daughter who's going to kill her. If you don't do, well, you already didn't do what the note said. So
yeah. And then to hang up, that's just odd.
But she didn't really hang up. She thought she did.
She thought she did.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But to think that you're hanging up,
If my daughter was missing, I would not hang up.
No.
Yeah, at all.
No, it's strange. So let's hear the enhanced version so we can hear what happens after she thinks that she hung up.
Patsy? Patsy?
So what did you do is said by an adult voice. What did you find said by a child?
Child's voice. And I mean, I think without a doubt, even if you don't hear with your ear what is actually being said, it's a child's voice.
Oh, 100% it's a child's voice.
Different pitch for sure. You can tell it's a higher pitched voice. What I'm just trying to wrap my head around who's like, why are they saying like, don't speak? We're not going to speak to you. Like, who are they saying that?
They're saying it to Burke because allegedly, if we're, this is just spitballing. We're not saying this is what happened. But if they had come down and not found a ransom letter, but instead found their daughter dead.
Yeah.
Now they're going to say to Burke, what did you do? And he's like, well, what did you find? Before I tell you what I did, what did you find? And what do you think I did? And so I guess, I think it's a little bit of an underreaction. Like, we're not speaking to you, young man.
Yeah. It's kind of it's just a weird thing to say, I feel like.
Yeah. It's hard to figure out the context of that though. Cause they did, if we, believe they staged all of this, they would have already written the ransom note, found her, staged it. So why would they be?
They wouldn't. Why would they be talking like this?
Yeah. Why would they be saying, what did you do if they already, the adults, why would they have said, what did you do?
Well, Burke may have just come down at that point and they may not have written anything yet. I don't know. But if they're calling 911, you'd hope they'd already written it.
That's true. And it could be, what did you do, referring to anything, not necessarily what did you do to JonBenét.
Yeah, like what did you do? But either way, we can tell from this call if we believe that this is Burke's voice on the line, and I think it is. It sounds like a child.
It really does sound like a child.
He wasn't in his bed sleeping. He wasn't not down there. And why, if that was the truth, did they not be honest about that?
Mm-hmm. And of course, it's hard to judge someone's emotions and how they act and their behaviors. Burke was obviously so young, but in the Dr. Phil interview, so many people point out how odd his behavior was. He seems to be smiling a lot. It's almost like he's uncomfortable because he knows he's not telling the full story.
Yeah, and some people say, no, he has some sort of I think some people said maybe he has Asperger's or he's on the spectrum.
Yeah, it's possible. We don't know that.
And I think Dr. Phil said he's just socially awkward. Mm-hmm. That's possible. But we don't know that.
Yeah.
Well, then Patsy seems to immediately call some family friends over, including the Whites.
Yeah, she did. Right after she called the police.
Which is probably one of the most baffling things.
It is
that I can
incredibly
think
strange.
Of. After you get off the call with the 911 operator, you're immediately calling friends and having them come over, full knowing that you have a crime scene at your house.
And your ransom letter told you not to call anybody.
Yeah.
And you called everybody. So they don't have to have some crazy technology to be monitoring you. Anyone sitting outside the house could see that you called in an arsenal. For what reason? Why do you want all your friends around in this time? This is a family time. This is a time to be together as a family.
Why would your mind even go there to think of that in that moment?
Patsy, man.
Yeah. And it doesn't really line up with her behavior or just the way that she was, her personality, because they tried so hard to portray this perfect family in their time of distress when they're freaking out. Why would they want to have all their friends come and see them like that?
Sympathy, pity.
Oh, that's a good
Munchausen
point.
syndrome,
Yeah,
like
maybe it's the immediate. Yeah, that's actually a good point.
you think about it, like you said earlier, Patsy was living through JonBenét a little bit, right?
Totally.
And the way that parents who have the Munchausen by proxy and everything, they live through their children. Now JonBenét's dead, so this is Patsy's last hurrah to get some attention from her, and whether it's negative attention or positive attention,
especially if they were involved and not actually as upset as someone who is just now discovering all of this would be.
It's maybe gonna add confusion.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Chaos to the crime scene.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. Could have been strategic.
I think everything the Ramseys did was strategic. They were not dumb.
Kind of seems that way.
But if they wrote the ransom note, that was pretty dumb.
I agree. That was
like that, like
stupid.
Really stupid.
That's just what kills it for me is like, if they're this smart that they're, orchestrating this whole thing, why on earth write a ransom note like that, or even write a ransom note at all? Like
because
that just.
They may not have been thinking very clearly if this was a cover up for an accident.
Well, clearly they weren't thinking very clearly because they left the phone off the hook.
Yeah. No,
so they didn't
weren't.
make sure to hang up. So clearly there was turmoil going on if Patsy slammed the phone on, how phones would just kind of loosely hang off of the hook, which is clearly what happened. So it's just like there's clearly commotion going on. She's being pulled away from the phone.
So even though they're smart people, I think if this was a cover up of some sort, that they wouldn't have been thinking that clearly.
So when was the ransom note written?
To plan it before they called 911.
So you think it was
if
done
you believe in
earlier in the night?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Either
way
morning.
it was done.
I don't think the whole I woke up, got dressed, went down to make coffee, because what you have to also think about is Patsy full face of makeup.
Yeah.
Full face of makeup when the police get there.
For all that, yeah.
So you either put on makeup that morning or you never went to sleep, right?
Yeah.
From the night before, because you were still wearing the clothes you wore the night before. So you never went to sleep. And if you're just getting on a private plane, literally no one's seeing you to fly to your house in Michigan, you're not putting on makeup.
No,
who cares?
She knows all these people are going to be at the house. The police are going to be at the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Or she just never went to sleep the night before. She still had her makeup on from when they were at the Fleet's Christmas party and her clothes still.
Right.
But would she be the type of woman to not take her makeup off at night?
She didn't go to
all over
sleep.
her sheets.
If she didn't go to sleep, because we don't. They said they went to sleep, but we have no idea what transpired
we don't have proof.
from, the time they got home from the Whites till the next morning. We have no idea what actually happened that night. We just have what they've said.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of time for all of this to go down.
This cover up thing.
Exactly. For them to sort of come
sit
up
together and write the note.
Right.
Maybe that's why it sounds like it's coming from two different personalities, because maybe they collaboratively made this note together. And yeah, I mean, it is a stupid thing. Smart people do stupid things sometimes, especially under pressure. And you come down, your daughter's dead, or you accidentally hurt her to the point where she died. And you're thinking, we have to explain this. How do we explain that this child's dead in our home? Well, some outside intruder came in and did this.
And if you're really going to try to make that believable, maybe you're going to go over the top with it, go too far and make this too detailed and almost like a movie.
Because if you think about it, they had this main character energy, John and Patsy, right?
Yeah, they definitely do.
They thought they were super important. They were super influential. Yeah. Everybody wanted to be like them. So they're not going to have some run-of-the-mill criminal come and take their daughter. They have a foreign faction from a different country. They're so important.
That's such a good point. That definitely makes a lot of sense for why they would want to write this elaborate note.
Because their egos are so huge.
Yeah.
And as your ego goes up, your self-awareness goes down.
It's so true. It really does make a lot of sense when you think about it.
They're like, no, not some criminal. It's like a foreign faction. We got a foreign faction after us.
Yeah. Look how special we are.
Yeah, it's really, I'm just keep thinking, I'm like trying to put myself in their, their mindset, their brain while all this is going down. It's really just hard because it's like you just have something extremely traumatic happen. And again, we haven't even gotten into like the motive or why is JonBenét dead in the first place. But if your daughter had just died, whether it was an accidental or premeditated or whatever it was, like just the mind state that you're in, that you sit down and you're trying to concoct a plan that this was a kidnapping and the ransom note. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around why they went to such great lengths to sort of concoct this story. And I get the ego thing. I get the ego of, well, we don't want just some, neighborhood sex offender to, break it, but we want to elaborate this to make it seem like it's much bigger. It's just hard. It's like, I guess, I don't know, if it were me and if I were writing this note, I would have done something that would have been completely no way to trace it back to me, right? Untraceable. Yeah. Like, why'd they make it so traceable to them when everything, it seemed like they went to great lengths and everything else to make it seem
because
like
I don't
it was
think they had much
else.
time to think about it, and they're pressured and freaking out.
Under the wire.
Yeah. That makes you do stupid things.
Because you can't call the police and say, oh, JonBenét's dead. We have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
You have to have some sort of alternate theory.
Exactly.
And apparently this was theirs. If that's what happened, allegedly.
Right. Exactly.
But we're not saying that it did happen because we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But at 6 a.m., a police officer finally arrives at the Ramsey's residence. It's Officer French. And when he gets there, he notices that Patsy is visibly upset that there is an officer there at her house. And at this point, again, this is considering that we didn't hear Burke on that phone call. This was when Burke supposedly was woken up by an officer's flashlight being shined into his room. And one of the first things that they wanted to do was get Burke out of the house. And this is, I guess, why they had the family friends come over so that they could get Burke out of there. So Fleet actually took Burke back to the White's house where family friends would actually watch Burke. And apparently Burke was confused and crying as he left the house. Almost right away, the FBI was notified of a potential kidnapping. And since they believed that JonBenét had been abducted, they focused their search outside of the Ramsey home.
So police did an initial search of the Ramsey's house, and Officer French searched the basement and tried to open the cellar door, but it was either locked or jammed. Were you able to figure that out in your research, whether it was locked or jammed? I'm guessing it was just jammed.
The cellar door is such a big point of contention.
I know. I've never been able to figure that part out.
He said he couldn't get in, basically.
Yeah. So he was looking for a possible path that the kidnapper had used, not JonBenét herself. So that's probably why they just left the door like that at first.
Because they assume she's been actually kidnapped and has left the residence.
Detective Linda Arndt arrived at the crime scene at about 8 a.m. and police then tapped the Ramsey's phone lines as well.
Right, because the ransom note says between 8 and 10, there's got to be a phone call. So they're hoping that they're going to be able to record whoever these kidnappers are, talking about the money or the exchange or however this whole thing was going to go down.
And they also noted that John and Patsy were unusually distant.
So this is Linda. She wrote a huge long report about this. They weren't just distant. Like, they did not say one word to each other while the police were there. Patsy was with like her friends being comforted, the center of attention. And John was like opening mail at the counter and he was like in his office making phone calls, sort of like trolling around. I don't know what he's doing. He was like making jokes with the police officers, kind of laughing and stuff, very lighthearted.
And you'd think they'd want to be together and support each other through this moment.
Exactly.
John began the process of arranging the ransom money right away, and the kidnappers never called the Ramseys to give them further instructions or plan an exchange.
And this is another thing Linda says. She said the time came and went.
Yep.
What was it, 8 to 10?
Yeah.
She said 10 o'clock came and went. And now one person in that house looked up and was like,
oh, shit,
oh, no, it's 10. Now what do we do? It's 10:01. We got to do something. The time came and went.
You'd think there'd be urgency.
There was no, they did not make any.
Yeah, their behavior really doesn't match up with thinking that there is this person out there that's ready to collect this money and they have their daughter.
It's almost like they knew that no one was going to call.
Yeah.
So they weren't surprised when no one called.
It is almost like
And that could, in my mind, I'd be like, well, maybe the kidnappers think I actually called the police or they actually know. Maybe they're watching my house.
You would think that too. You'd be freaking out.
Right. I'd be frantic.
Because now she's dead. Because that's what the letter said.
Right. Right. And they said they're going to behead my daughter. I'd be like, I'd be
in
losing it.
Panic. Yeah.
But for John and them to just be kind of like completely doing their own thing, not really worried, not even talking to investigators or any sense of urgency at all is not there at all.
So right from the beginning, FBI agent Ron Walker was sent the ransom note and he immediately thought it was a red herring. He believed the kidnapping was staged by the family and that the note was created to sell the story. And clearly we're kind of leaning that way as well. It seems like most people, fall into that theory.
How can you not with the ransom note, though? It's like,
I know.
I don't think anyone believes it's real. I've never met anyone or seen anything online where people are like, this ransom note's definitely legit. We got to figure out who this SPTC foreign faction is that no one has ever heard of. Not the FBI, no one.
SPTC. What could that even possibly stand for?
It reminds me of like the Roman thing, like SPQR kind of, like that they used to have that. And they used to like tattoo it and stuff. I think it's made up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's clearly fictitious.
People have like gone to great lengths to try to like decode this.
Oh, Totally.
but nothing.
Nothing. At this point, Agent Walker called Detective Arndt and told her to keep watch over everyone in the family and make sure they didn't leave. Walker believed that they would find JonBenét dead, and they did.
Mm-hmm. Well, around noon, Detective Arndt called Walker back and told him that John had disappeared for about 90 minutes. They shouldn't have left Linda Arndt alone with this, and not only with the family, but with all the friends. The pastor was there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people all in and out.
Yeah.
And I guess it was Christmas, so they were short-staffed. So they were like, you stay here and babysit.
Yeah.
But she can't keep an eye on everyone at once, and that wasn't very fair to her. So John Ramsey disappears for 90 minutes. When he came back, his behavior had changed significantly. He was agitated, and he didn't want to talk to anybody. John claims that he had gone to his study, but that was never confirmed. Walker told Arndt to keep John busy by having him help search the house. So around 1 p.m., Detective Arndt, because I guess at this point, John Ramsey's like pacing and and she's like, hey, you could really help us out. Search the house from top to bottom. But
why are literally John Ramsey and the family friends not out of the house yet?
Exactly.
Why aren't they protecting this?
Like, this is also an area where there's not crime. This was the first murder.
Yeah.
It was December.
No.
And it was the first murder that had happened. So this was not a police force that was used to handling crime scenes. And
but I'm like, come on.
It's like basic knowledge still, though.
I would think.
If you're a detective, especially, that is like Detective 101, right?
Yeah.
It's like, protect the crime scene, protect the evidence, at least tape it off, bring people outside.
Let's keep this guy busy and have him help.
But no, let's have the
What?
victim's father search the house top to bottom.
Yeah, that was super, super strange.
Well, it was busy work. So the police had already searched the house. JonBenét's room was taped off. So they were like, don't go in her room,
Yep.
But he didn't search the house from top to bottom. He went right to the basement, right? Immediately to the basement. He grabbed his buddy, Fleet White, and he went right to the basement. And they searched the basement for about a minute before John opened the cellar door, the one that had been previously jammed or locked. And it's weird the way that this happened. According to Fleet, John opened the cellar and they called it the wine cellar. So he opened the door and immediately, as soon as he opened the door, he said, I found her. And then he turned the light on.
Yeah, it seems like he was anxious to find her and have that part finished, you know.
I found her, then he turned the light on. This is like a windowless room.
Yep.
It's going to be dark. So unless there was a good deal amount of light flooding in from the hallway, how would you know that you had found her? And her body was covered with a
That's
white
what I was gonna
blanket.
say, yeah.
Yep. And we
It
were
just looked
watching
like
a
pile on the
documentary.
floor.
Yeah, it just looks like a pile on the floor.
What were we watching last night? What was the name of the documentary?
What really happened, JonBenét Ramsey.
It's a newer one, right?
Yeah, it's
last year it came out. I
It's
believe.
the
Yeah.
ID Discovery.
I hadn't seen it, and I was surprised to hear him say that he was happy at first when he found her. He's like, obviously, I quickly realized that she was dead, and I was upset. But I thought it was so strange that he even said I was happy to find her when she was laying on the floor under this blanket. Why? I mean, it's just strange to even say that.
Weird choice of words for sure. So JonBenét was found in this basement cellar, which wasn't able to be opened before, but now was opened. She's in there, and he found her before he turned the light on. She was covered in her favorite white blanket. Her wrists were bound above her head with a white cord, and there was duct tape over her mouth. There was also a cord wrapped around her neck that had been tied around a paintbrush handle. So this is a garrote, essentially. It's something that paintbrush handle basically gives the person more leverage and the ability to pull that tighter and harder.
And also do it slowly.
Oh my gosh. It's really it's a tool of torture. John knelt next to JonBenét's body. He touched her cheek, and then he removed the duct tape and he tried to untie her wrists. And then he screamed. He picked her up and brought her upstairs and laid her on the floor. So this is obviously awful because this is a contamination of the crime scene.
Yep.
You're laying her on a floor right at the front. It was the front carpet where you come in, where people have walked, not just that day, but forever. And now all this DNA could be potentially getting on her. That has nothing to do with the crime scene. Why didn't he leave her there
That's
and
what I'm
call the
saying.
police from upstairs? There's
They're
a police
already
officer
there.
upstairs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why
and
did
just
that
from-
thought not cross his head at all? Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, my daughter was murdered. Therefore, I want to catch the person that murdered her. So I should probably just step away from the body, go upstairs, and let the police come down here and actually investigate this scene down here. And he
Yeah.
didn't
How
do that
often
at
do you
all.
ever hear of stuff like this when the police are in the home?
Or they
Never.
pick up a body and move it?
Yeah.
Yeah, not very often at
No.
all. I mean,
The fact that they weren't at least accompanying him into the basement is so strange.
Well, because they thought the house had been checked, so they didn't think he was going to find anything. They just wanted to keep him busy.
Yeah.
But apparently he made a beeline for that cellar.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's very clear that likely this door was locked. And if you're looking at it from the perspective that we are, likely John locked the door
and then unlocked it.
But I'm just thinking, like, why not just let them come and find her down there?
Yeah.
Why lock it? Maybe he was
Maybe they were hoping to go with the kidnapping plot for long enough.
Yeah.
You know, like let that go and then find a place to hide the body. Maybe allegedly, if this is what happened, we're not saying it is. We're just theorizing.
Yeah.
But if you did that, maybe you just want this to be a missing child. You don't want the body found. You're going to let the police come and do their thing and then go out and leave the house to look for her. And then you figure out something to do.
Or maybe they intended for the police to find her
But
and they
jammed.
didn't. So they were frustrated. He's like, okay, I'm going to go do it
'cause
myself
I'm
and
just
get
like,
this going.
If that were the case, then why didn't they move? Why didn't they get her body out of the house during the night? Why even leave her down there in the cellar? Like, why not? John could have easily gotten her body out of the house, probably far away from the house.
That would have been the
by the
smartest
time they
thing to
called
do.
that next morning. I mean, again, we don't know exactly, when JonBenét necessarily died or how that went down. But I'm just thinking, like, why leave her in the cellar when you could probably get her far away before the cops even arrive?
But again, they probably didn't have
Clean
much
that
time.
cellar room, and there's no evidence there.
Then you got neighbors who are like, yeah, we saw John leave at like 3:30 a.m. on Christmas night,
It's
and
true.
like
There's
all those
risks with that.
nosy Nancy's trying to get in the way of your crime,
Well, I mean, wait till
Or
it's
they
like
could
3 a.m.
They could check like maybe, I don't know, where their cell phones back then, like to see if he'd left or tolls or things like that.
Yeah.
Probably they felt like keeping it internal was the best way to like keep it less messy at that point.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But I've always thought that was so odd that the police didn't ask him to unlock that door, right? Because even if they couldn't get it open, they should have. The police really
Do
screwed
you
this
have
case
any
up.
way to open this? Yeah.
We need you to open this, sir, because the killer could still be in the house. We don't know.
Right.
If
They
the
have to
killer's
clear the
gone,
home.
we got
Yeah.
to clear the home.
Exactly.
We have
Yeah.
not cleared this house yet. The killer
Yeah.
could have gone in and locked himself in there, just waiting for everybody to go back upstairs so he could come out and get away or go on a murdering spree. Like,
And then they send a family member down there to check it out.
really bad police work. Yeah.
Really,
Well, and
it's
I
honestly
think too,
mind-blowing.
it's like the police officers go and they immediately judge, the family environment that they're in. They're like, this is a rich family. There's some of that going on too. I'm sure that they're like,
That's exactly
we'll just
why.
take their
Yeah.
word for it
I think
because
you're
these
right.
guys are.
Yeah.
They seem straight up.
They seem like they got
Yeah.
it together.
Except for Ron Walker immediately thought that the parents had
Because he's
staged it.
FBI. He's FBI, man. He don't care about the Ramseys.
Right.
He's not. But the weird thing is, Detective Linda Arndt, she's really gone hard that she believes the Ramseys did this. So John brings JonBenét upstairs, lays her on the carpet, and Linda Arndt was like, you got to step back, and she said that there was a point when they were both kneeling in front of JonBenét's body, and John looked up and she looked up and they met eyes.
Yeah.
And she wanted to like feel for her service revolver, and she like mentally counted the rounds she had in there because she said she believed that the killer was still in the house. So she doesn't come right out and say it, but that implies that she thinks that somebody in the family did it. And that's why she felt afraid, because at this point, the crime's been discovered. There's not a kidnapping.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's looking at her and she's looking at him, and they're both like, okay, we know what's up.
And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up. I said everything made sense in that instance. And I knew what happened.
Do you think your fear was well-founded?
You bet I do. There's no doubt in my mind.
To this day?
Never wavered.
You were afraid because you thought the killer was still in the house.
I knew it.
Absolutely?
Absolutely.
Definitely hinting that she thinks it was someone in the family.
And I mean, she's, I think she even looks kind of afraid recalling it.
Yeah, she does.
It's like, this is a very traumatic sort of, and she's left there alone. There's no other cops.
And obviously bringing that up right after saying that they locked eyes.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious who she
What she's
thinks
implying.
was the killer.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the Ramseys then went to a friend's house where Burke was. John told Burke that his sister was in heaven, and Burke began to sob. But there's other stuff that happened before this, such as John tried to get a private plane to go to Atlanta. Within an hour after finding his daughter's dead body, he's on the phone telling the pilot to get the private plane gassed up. They're no longer going to Michigan, going to Atlanta. And then the police were like, dude, you can't leave. Like, what are you talking about? And later they asked, like, what did you need to do? Like, what did you need to go to Atlanta for? And he was like, oh, I had a very important like business meeting.
Oh, come on, dude. I mean, that is a huge
That's more important
factor
than finding the killer of your daughter right now?
Obviously not, right?
Yeah. No. Who would do that?
And
who would even
let
be
you
thinking
leave?
about that or remember that they even had a fucking business meeting when this is going on? It just makes no sense at all.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, either these are very cold-hearted people that are just like all about business and all about money and everything comes second, which could be, but to this extent?
No.
And we have to remember that John and Patsy were originally from Atlanta. So their lawyer was in Atlanta as well. So, I mean, at this point, and it's smart, I think everyone deserves to be represented. But they're probably like, yo, they're going to think it's us. So we need to get a lawyer on this real quick.
Yeah. We need to get out of here, too, and away from the police.
Mm-hmm.
JonBenét's autopsy was completed the next day, and this is what it said. Her blonde hair was in 2 ponytails. She was wearing a small gold ring, gold bracelet, and a gold cross necklace. A heart was drawn in the palm of her hand in red ink, and she was wearing a long-sleeve white shirt with a silver sequined star on the front that had dried mucus, which was likely from her nose or mouth, on the sleeve. She wore matching long knit underwear and white underwear with roses and the word Wednesday embroidered on them. Multiple injuries included abrasions on the side of her face between her ear and jaw. There were twin marks on her lower back that looked like she had been prodded with something. Petechial hemorrhages in her eyes, which is blood from burst blood vessels from death by strangulation. There was massive skull fracture along with bleeding and bruising on her brain. White cord tying her wrists together. A white cord wrapped around her neck, double knotted around a wooden stick to make a garrote. And the garrote was made from a broken handle of one of Patsy's paintbrushes.
Yeah. Can we talk about that for a second? What are the chances that someone breaks in and creates a weapon inside the house? That is so strange.
What are the chances that someone breaks in and writes a ransom note inside the house?
I mean, all of it just...
like Goldilocks and the 3 Little Bears, like porridge, I'll eat it. A bed, I'll sleep in it.
Yep. Why would they take all that risk?
If you knew you were going there to do that, you would have been more prepared, I think.
Yeah. I think the paintbrush thing.
So like my thing was the garrote was one of the things that really created some doubt initially around the parents. Cause I'm like, well, I mean, that's like a torture device. I mean, that's definitely not something, I mean, it's sort of easy to rig up if you know how to do it, but it's like, why would you would
want to believe that parents would never even be capable of doing something
right, exactly. Like but then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, John was in the military.
Yeah, he was in the Navy.
And I bet you anything they taught him how to certainly tie knots in the Navy. So, you have to tie certain knots around the actual paintbrush in order to get it to actually, if you put so much force on it, that's not going to just untie. And so he would have the knowledge in order to make this garrote, and likely may have made garrotes before. I mean, we don't know. Also, according to the autopsy, there were fingernail marks above the ligature, which likely meant that JonBenét had been fighting for her life, because as she was being strangled, she was digging her fingernails into her neck in order to try and pull the ligature away from her neck.
That is incredibly heartbreaking to think about.
Yeah, extremely sad.
Makes me feel sick.
Her bladder was empty. Urine and blood were found in her underwear, and the blood was mixed with a small amount of unidentified male DNA. The DNA also appeared on the waistband of her underwear. Acute vaginal trauma or inflammation and injury of the hymen. There was chronic vaginal trauma as well. Undigested pineapple still in her stomach. And reports concluded that JonBenét had suffered a massive blow to the head with a heavy object, and that she then subsequently died of suffocation due to strangulation.
So you said chronic vaginal trauma.
What does that imply?
Yeah, we all know.
Sexual abuse, long term.
Yeah, and especially if you think long term, then it really makes you think family member. John.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe not even John, but somebody
else
that was around often. I mean, they always had their friends with them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had parties. They had all sorts of people coming through their house.
They're very social.
Yep.
So we're not exactly sure if it was the strangulation that came first or the blow to her head, but she was likely knocked unconscious by the blow to her head, and it may have caused brain death. Then strangulation shut down the rest of the body and killed her. The blow would have eventually been fatal if it was left untreated, but the strangulation is what probably ultimately killed her. And we were talking just now about, there's the talk of her pulling at the ligature. And would she have been able to do that if she was
hit on the head? Yeah. Unconscious. Obviously, you're not going to be able to pull at the ligatures. But I think what happened was, and this is there's a lot of contention around exactly what happened. I mean, there's other sources and documentaries out there that said the blow is what killed her, but I think the murder weapon was the garrote, and that was going to be the weapon that killed her. But because she was fighting so much, because we know that because there's fingernail marks around her neck where she was pulling away at the ligatures, that eventually whoever killed her then hit her over the head in order to render her unconscious and then finish the job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is absolutely horrific.
So doctors' medical opinions unanimously agree that JonBenét had suffered acute vaginal trauma before she was killed on the 26th. And most doctors agree that JonBenét had suffered prior chronic vaginal trauma. And this would indicate that JonBenét had been the victim of prior sexual abuse before the 26th.
Which, just to clarify, the Ramsey's legal team has claimed that JonBenét was not sexually abused. But obviously, it's hard to dispute medical evidence that they have actually collected. So it's very clear that she was.
It's also likely that JonBenét had wet the bed that night or just wet herself when she was killed, given that her underwear and long johns were soaked with urine. But there wasn't anything found in the bed, so it had to have been when she passed.
Unless somebody changed the sheets and washed them and all that, but
that seems unlikely.
I don't think Patsy's ever made a bed in her life. You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. At first, investigators thought the back marks were from a stun gun. It's also possible that they came from a piece of toy train tracks, which lined up perfectly with the marks, and it was probably used to prod her.
This is really disputed, though.
Yeah.
Really disputed those 2 marks because I think it was the people who are kind of leaning towards Burke did it, who come up with the train track thing.
Yeah.
And then it was Detective Lou Smet who said, no, he believes those were from a stun gun. But Burke did have a big toy train set in the basement. And, that's where JonBenét was found, in the basement. And he did say he got up to play with his toys that night, but he didn't know when he went back to bed. So that's definitely strange. If he was playing with the toy train set, then...
Yeah.
That's pretty forceful, though. That's my thing is, even with a toy, you'd have to push pretty hard to get marks like that.
Well, in that series, they said, in the series, the one that we were watching the video
the CBS
from,
one.
They said maybe he did it like a kid would do it after she had, fallen or he had hit her with something to crack her head, and then she fell, and he was poking her with it to see if she was alive, to see if he could get a reaction from her.
But when you poke more than once,
you think so.
Why would there be
so specific
and set of marks like that? Looks like it'd be hard. And just hold it there.
Yeah.
And how do all these experts not know the difference between toy train track marks and a stun gun mark?
Yeah. It really does look like a stun gun.
We should be able to more definitively.
Yeah, where's the forensic experts on this
We should be able to more definitively say what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as the crime scene goes, one of the windows in the basement had been broken, and John said this was likely an accident, that he had broken the basement window that summer working or after he lost his keys. And the window didn't get fixed because he assumed Patsy would take care of it. There were also cobwebs in the windowsill that hadn't been disturbed. So this would have been basically broken and open for quite a while. Below the window with the cobwebs, they also noticed that there was a mark on the wall. And then below that mark was a blue Samsonite suitcase that the family claimed was not there before. Colorado CSI investigators executed a search warrant on the house on the day of the 26th, and near JonBenét's bed, they found a pair of long johns that contained fecal matter. The long johns were believed to be Burke's, but it's unclear of who exactly believed that they were Burke's. They also found feces smeared on candy inside a candy box JonBenét got as a Christmas present. And given that the family's activities are corroborated on Christmas Day until after they returned from the Whites, this smearing incident would have likely happened after the Ramseys returned home that night. According to the lead child abuse examiner for Boulder County, Holly Smith, most of the underwear in JonBenét's dresser drawers had been soiled with fecal matter. Patsy had said before that JonBenét had issues with wiping fully.
Wait, the underwear in her drawer had fecal matter on it? Like current fecal matter? Or was Holly Smith able to determine that it had once been fecal matter?
I think it was once, stained or just light staining.
Oh, so she could tell that it had at one point been there. It wasn't just put back in the drawer.
No. I think it was after it had been washed, there was still residual stain left over because she had issues with wiping, I guess. But JonBenét's room was the only one that was initially blocked off to prevent crime scene contamination. In the meantime, that day, multiple people, including friends, victim advocates, the family's pastor, and other police officers were walking in and out of the house constantly. So just contaminating the entire rest of the house.
What a mess.
Friends were cleaning parts of the kitchen even and moving things around before JonBenét's body was found, which potentially destroyed crucial evidence. John moved JonBenét's body from the basement to the upstairs level, disturbing critical forensic evidence, which made the scene even more contaminated.
So since the investigation was now a murder and not a kidnapping, the case jurisdiction fell back on the Boulder Police Department. And the FBI offered to help the Boulder Police Department with the investigation, but they declined the offer, which is pretty strange. Like, why?
You actually see this a lot because it's like hometown advantage. Like, we don't need the federal government to come
ego.
in.
Yeah, but with how just unqualified they were for this,
but nobody wants
they
to
would
admit
take
that.
the help.
It makes sense to us, but
Can you
as
imagine? They get out there like, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good
Sorry,
point.
public.
That's a good point.
We're letting the FBI do our job for us.
We just hope nobody would get murdered here, but since it happened.
Yeah, because like we were saying, Boulder is a generally safe town. There is normally about one murder a year, so they really aren't equipped to handle cases of this size. But they eventually did accept the FBI's help the next day.
Which you have to remember too. I mean, this case blew up almost immediately. Like there was reporters all over the place, literally that next morning, and it made international news. I mean, JonBenét, she's this pageant girl, and it just went crazy viral for the time.
Mm-hmm. And the BPD was treating the Ramseys as if they were victims rather than suspects right off the bat, which is strange because, you know, in most cases, family is involved, and you'd think their brains would automatically go towards that. But the DA's office had basically told them to treat the Ramseys with kid gloves, to go easy on them and not press on any questions if they couldn't answer them, which is strange. Why? Why would they say that?
Because they're well-known, wealthy, and influential in town. So, I mean, they don't want to beef with like the most well-known, popular family in town. That doesn't look good for them either.
Or there were other factors at play.
Do you think the Ramseys donated to the BPD a lot?
That's what I was thinking. They very well could have.
I mean, they're tied into the Chamber of Commerce and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you'd have to think that they probably had connections to the department in some way.
I guarantee you they were like annual donors.
Oh, yeah.
Big time annual donors. Yeah. But I mean, that's just my opinion, allegedly. I don't know.
Use kid gloves on this family whose daughter was murdered inside their home. Like, seriously? It's so strange. So this might have been political, as we were saying. The Ramseys were well known.
Or I just thought, sorry to jump in, but I just thought on your point, Stephanie, that perhaps for, you know, Boulder County Sheriff, the sheriff's political position within the town, maybe John Ramsey was a donor in the
political
past
party
to political parties. I mean,
and then
politics.
that guy called, like the big guy called and
right,
was like,
right.
All right, we don't want to upset our donors. All right. So like they're a good family. They didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely some of that going on for sure.
It's always money. It always comes down to money, doesn't it?
Always.
You know, there's a website, Boulder Police Department. It has like Google reviews. 2 stars.
Oh boy.
2 stars. I didn't even know you could do that. And when it's looking down and it says all about like how bad they did on the JonBenét Ramsey case.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And they're, wow. I mean, it's one of their biggest cases.
I mean, that's not the only thing they've messed up on. I mean, they've had a lot of issues in recent days. They've had racial issues in the past. I mean, it's definitely not known as a stellar police department by any means.
It's not a very integrated area. It's not like super diverse.
No. So this case totally turned into a battle of the egos between the Boulder Police Department, FBI, and DA's office. Police questioned the family briefly after JonBenét was found, and the family were obviously very upset. The family also turned over hair and DNA samples.
But none of the DNA that was found in JonBenét's underwear matched Burke or John Ramsey or, you know, even I think they tested John Ramsey's older kids from his other marriage. It didn't match them either. So,
it was foreign DNA.
Extremely
for sure.
strange.
Foreign faction.
Faction.
Potentially.
That's right. Burke was interviewed briefly by police at the Whites that day, and he saw a child psychologist also 13 days later. In the interview with the psychologist, Burke's behavior was odd. I mean, it's odd most of the time. But some of his statements seemed like they were kind of coached.
Secrets, do you think?
I probably do, but I don't really remember them.
Yeah?
If I did remember any, I don't think I'd tell you.
Why not? I'm a good person to tell secrets to.
Because they're secrets.
I mean, he's right.
So things changed at your house a lot?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, what's changed?
Well, you know, the police have it blocked off and stuff.
Well, what about for you and your parents? Okay.
My parents are sometimes crying.
Yeah.
He's super casual.
I was going to say, so casual.
I'm basically just going on with my life.
That's weird.
So what did your parents tell you about your sister dying?
Or just that when I got there to the house where the kind of type thing. But my dad said, JonBenét's in heaven now. Just got burst into tears.
Not bad. How are you dealing with it now?
I kind of forget about it because I'm just going.
You're just playing your video games all the time.
Go.
So wait, maybe you could draw your picture of your family for me while you tell me about it. Can you do that for me? Please can draw. But this doesn't mean that. It's not a test of your drawing. Just so I get to know your family and stuff like that. So who's next? Who would you draw next? Okay. So what's your mom do? She work up at the house?
Work as a mom.
Work as a mom. So what do you like best about your mom? That's it? Was your mom the kind of mom that gives lots of hugs and kisses?
Yeah.
Both you and your sister, or just you, or just your sister? Anybody else in your family? Are you going to talk?
About me.
What about you?
So basically, Burke is drawing out his family, but he only draws out his mom and his dad and himself, and he never draws JonBenét.
Yeah, he seems to not even have any emotion about her death either. It's incredibly strange.
It's like he came to this acceptance really fast.
Eerily fast.
I burst into tears. But now I'm just going on with my life.
Yeah, it was that interview that kind of had me leaning towards the idea that Burke originally attacked her, and it was, he was assisted by the parents to cover it up. I've since kind of wavered from that, but that had always been the theory that made most sense to me in the beginning. However, her injuries are so intense that I don't know if a child could have done them. But that interview is strange. It's really, really weird.
I mean, he's clearly uncomfortable too. I mean, you can see him fidgeting. You can see him like put the game on his head.
Well,
he's definitely having
he's also a
anxiety.
child.
Well, I mean, just from his movements, though, they're kind of erratic. And I mean, what do you think, Janelle? I see you nodding over there.
I personally don't think it's as weird as some people do. Because I don't know, not that I've interviewed kids to this extent, but I have worked as a counselor with kids before. And when you talk about family topics, a lot of times they get kind of weird. They
antsy.
They get very, very antsy. Tons of fidgeting. That I don't really think is weird at all. I think he's just being a kid, putting shit over his head.
What about the knife thing? Like maybe they stabbed her or hit her with a hammer. That's weird, right?
I think, definitely some parts of it are weird. However, I don't know if it's necessarily enough for it to be like, oh, boom, for sure, he's looking sus because of it. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. That's not a very long, clip.
What kind of video games is he playing, though? If that's like he's so desensitized to that violence, especially in reference to his little sister. I could see like, maybe in my video game, they like stabbed him with a knife, but you're talking about your sister's death.
He also could be like, suppressing these memories.
Yeah.
Maybe he blacked out during it and genuinely doesn't really remember a lot of it. Also, the fact that this random person is interviewing him in a weird room. He's not super comfortable. Like, she has snacks and games and whatever, but
he still knows he's being questioned. Like
kids aren't dumb. They know. Right. And
she's asking me weird questions.
There's been times where I was, in sessions with kids and I could tell like some weird shit was going on and they'd be like, oh no, it's a secret. Like, I can't tell you. There's, kids are secretive. They're not dumb. They know that you're there to try and figure shit out.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times they're going to try and protect their family or themselves. I don't know.
But he seems pretty confident there at the beginning. Like, he seems to hold his own. Like, lady, they're secrets. I'm not going to tell you. Like, what are you talking about? Like he seems almost in control of the conversation where she's like, come on, I'm a good person to tell secrets. He's like, stop. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I'm thinking about my son who's 10. And how would he behave in that situation if somebody asked him like a secret? He wouldn't be like, I got secrets. I'm not telling you. He'd be like, well, like, I don't really know you. He'd be more like withdrawn because it is a stranger. But Burke seems to be very like upfront with the stranger initially. And then he gets weird when they start talking about the murder. He's fine talking about secrets. He's fine talking about like the family dynamic. But when they start talking about the murder, that's when he starts putting the game on his head and acting all
talking
weird.
About inappropriate touching. I mean, it's hard to say again with the fidgeting and putting the game on your head and stuff. Cause I mean, that's just how I was all the time as a kid. I was always like moving around, grabbing things, doing just weird things when I would talk to really anybody. So I think it's hard to, I still do it too. So it is kind of hard to judge his behavior.
So Patsy and John started to suspect that the police were suspicious of them, and they lawyered up. They actually got 2 separate lawyers. They got 2 different lawyers, and they weren't questioned by police until 5 months after the murder in 1997. And they had a lot of conditions. So they had a time limit that they could be questioned. They wanted a copy of their initial report to the police. It was very, and I don't think that the police would have done that with any other. Suspects.
Give them that much information on their investigation potentially into them. Like, why would they divulge that information?
There's only one reason you'd want it.
Right. Yeah. To protect yourself.
Before that, though, they did an interview with CNN on January 1st, 1997. So hear what I said. Before they talked to the police, they did an interview with CNN. So they want their narrative, their side of the story out there in the public before they talk to the police.
Yeah, obviously strategic.
Very. And they maintained their innocence. And Patsy warned Boulder residents that there was a killer on the loose. This is a very, she's super dramatic. She's super, let's play it because I think it's very telling.
You believe it's someone outside your home.
There is a killer on the loose. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's a he or a she. But if I were a resident of Boulder, I will tell my friends to keep your babies close to you. There's someone out there.
Now, that's an incredibly strange moment right there.
I think she's on something,
I was
right?
just about to say she has to be, right?
She might be on Xanax, or like even that kind of is like to me, that's like a martini slur. But it could be Xanax or something. And that could be just she's self-medicating because she is so devastated.
Which, yes, exactly. That is possible and would make sense. I would probably have to do that to
probably
myself.
not before you go on CNN, though, right? You probably wouldn't pull back from that.
Or you'd be so anxious that maybe she thought it was a good idea. But she clearly, I agree. Just the way her eyes are kind of drooping, the speech, like she's kind of having trouble finding the words. Definitely on something or drinking, for sure.
Well, that's the weird thing, though, because after this interview, I mean, she's very insistent. There's a killer on the loose. And I also thought it was interesting. They had the camera on John, and they were like, so you think it was someone outside the house? And he's like, oh, and she's like, yes. And then they move it over, like she kind of cuts him off.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, no, we need to be like a solid, front on this.
Right.
There's definitely someone outside the house. But then the mayor and the police issued statements saying, no, there's no killer on the loose. There's no reason for Boulder residents to be afraid. There's not a murderer wandering around. Now, this could be because they don't want people to freak out.
Right.
But also, you'd think that if this was something the police actually believed, they would be a little bit more cautionary and be like, yeah, guys, there might be something out there. Just be safe. Keep your kids with you at all times. We don't think you have anything to worry about, but we really just want everyone to stay safe. But they were also vehement. They're like, no, there's no killer on the loose. So this is kind of saying, we don't think there's a killer on the loose. We haven't caught any killer. Therefore, what are they
We're
suggesting?
implying that they are the killers.
And don't you think John seems kind of worried about how Patsy's talking or like embarrassed? Like he kind of tells her.
I think he's almost just kind of like playing a role. To me, it seems didn't seem that authentic, sort of his emotion. He's like, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. And I'm like,
I think he was trying to like reel her back in. Like he didn't like the way she was talking or potentially knew that she was under the influence of something that was a little embarrassed.
I agree. On April 30th, 1997, the Ramseys agreed to be interviewed on the condition that they could have a copy of the statements they gave police on December 26th. The DA agreed to this and their other conditions, which is just ridiculous. Like
special treatment right there.
He needs to be fired. The DA needs to be fired. His entire treatment of this case, I don't know. He probably isn't the DA anymore, but he needs to not work in public service anymore because
absolute garbage.
You're not putting the public's,
Well, guess what the DA is? An elected position.
Yeah.
So perhaps they gave money to him. I mean, maybe there's a relationship there that we don't know about or a reason for him to protect.
Yeah, it seems like
John.
it.
Yeah.
Burke was questioned by a detective in 1998 as a possible witness in the murder, not a suspect. He was not questioned by police again. In late 1998, Boulder DA Alex Hunter decided to call a grand jury to decide if John and Patsy Ramsey would be indicted in their daughter's death. He presented the case to a grand jury of 8 women and 4 men. After about a year of the grand jury being presented with evidence and witness testimony, Alex Hunter announced that his office would not be pursuing charges against the Ramseys. Now, that's because what the grand jury had decided on was kept secret, as it always is. So we didn't know what the grand jury had said before Alex Hunter said we're not pursuing charges. But we all assumed, because we're logical human beings, well, the grand jury must have said there's not enough information. Why would Alex Hunter, the DA, call a grand jury and then go against their recommendation?
Yeah.
It does seem ridiculous, right?
It does.
The jurors were not allowed to discuss any part of the grand jury. It later did come out, though, that they had actually decided to indict John and Patsy. They believed that the Ramseys knew who killed JonBenét and covered up her murder, and Alex Hunter was the one who decided to not file charges.
Which that's pretty rare, I would say, for a DA to go against a grand jury when the grand jury is like, yeah, we could do this. We can bring this to trial. We can do this. We can prosecute this. So
because it was a show. It's a show to demonstrate I'm doing something. I'm moving forward. And he thought, well, if they say not to indict, then great. I'm in good shape. And if they say do indict, well, great. I'm still going to be able to do whatever I want because no one knows. It's secret. The outcome is secret. So he did a little demonstration.
So the question is, why is Alex Hunter going against the grand jury? What's the reasoning behind that? And that's
he never wanted to indict them at all.
No.
Right.
He was protecting them from the beginning, it seems like.
He really was. Allegedly.
That's right.
So when looking at the DNA evidence a little bit more, there's a possibility that the DNA evidence found on JonBenét's underwear was touch DNA, which just means that it might have belonged to a factory worker or really anybody who might have handled the underwear before they were even sold. Or someone else in the home, or, we just don't know who.
When she was placed on that carpet, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Could have been like a UPS guy.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Touch DNA is really tricky like that because you can put, like, the UPS guy could put a package on that carpet or give it to John, and John puts the package on the carpet, and the UPS guy's DNA is now on the carpet.
Yeah.
And now it's on JonBenét.
Yep.
Yeah.
DNA was also found under JonBenét's fingernail, and the fingernail and underwear samples were both too small for labs to build a full DNA profile for them. So the two samples couldn't be conclusively determined to have come from the same source. Measures used to prevent cross-contamination from the nail clippers used by the coroner might not have been totally effective, so that could explain that. But the DNA did not match any of the Ramseys. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the sketchy parts of this case and just really all the inconsistencies, as well as take a look at sort of the theories surrounding what might have happened to JonBenét. But before we do that, we're going to take our last break, and we'll be right back. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like leaving your keys in your car while you run into the gas station for a snack, and most of the time, you're probably fine, right? But what if you come back and see someone driving off with your car? Every time you connect to an unencrypted network, which usually that's when you're at cafes, coffee shops, hotels, airports, any hacker on that same network can gain access to your personal data. And your data is valuable. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on the dark web. So why use ExpressVPN? Well, ExpressVPN creates an encrypted tunnel for all of your internet data traffic to pass through. This tunnel is encrypted and nearly impossible to hack. It would actually take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. But what I love most about ExpressVPN is just how easy it is to use. Anybody can do it. All you do is fire up the ExpressVPN app and click one button to get protected. It's that simple. And you can choose whatever location you want to connect to. So you can connect to other countries. If you want to access different libraries on Netflix, it's really that easy. And it works on all your devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and more, so you can stay secure on the go. I love ExpressVPN. It's so easy to use and effective that I've used it for the past 5 years. So protect your privacy today and get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Visit expressvpn.com/milehigher. That's expressvpn.com/milehigher for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/milehigher to learn more today.
You guys, going to the pharmacy in person is so 2021. So get your birth control online, prescribed and delivered for free with the Pill Club. You'll never have to make a trip to the doctor specifically to get your prescription refilled or have to wait in line at the pharmacy ever again, because the Pill Club provides personalized care from the comfort of your home and delivery right to your door on time, every time. The Pill Club carries over 120 FDA-approved brands and ships to all 50 states. Most brands of birth control are free with insurance or Medicaid. Otherwise, prices start as low as $7 per month without insurance. The Pill Club delivers birth control to your door for free in discreet packaging, along with fun self-care gifts and other goodies. And what's great is their licensed medical team is just a text away to answer all of your questions. Sign up for birth control in just 5 minutes. Skip the office visits and waiting in line at the pharmacy by joining the Pill Club. Right now, when you go to thepillclub.com/milehigher, the Pill Club is offering a $10 donation to bedsider.org for every Mile Higher listener who becomes a patient. Your donation will help low-income individuals get access to birth control through bedsider.org. That's thepillclub.com/milehigher to get your first birth control care package and donate to help more women in need of affordable birth control. Remember, thepillclub.com/milehigher. You must use that link to make your donation.
Whether it's saving more and spending less, getting organized, or losing weight, there are a lot of worthwhile goals to set for yourself this year. At the top of my list is learning a new language with Babbel, the language learning app that sold more than 10 million subscriptions. I don't know about you, but I was not a big fan of Spanish class back in high school. For whatever reason, it just was not fun. I felt like I never really learned anything, and it ended up just being a pain in my ass. But with Babbel, not only is learning a new language fun and a new engaging hobby for you, but you can use it while you check off traveling more from your list. The whole Babbel process is addictively fun and easy. Babbel teaches bite-sized language lessons for real-world use. What I love about Babbel is it's really bite-sized lessons. You can literally do a lesson while you're on the toilet every day. With Babbel's 15-minute lessons, it makes it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans, but Babbel lessons were created by over 100 language experts. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective. So start your new language learning journey today with Babbel. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use promo code MileHigher. That's BABBEL.com. Use code MileHigher because Babbel is language for life.
All right, so some sketchy parts of this case, obviously the ransom note. I think we all agree. Like that is the one, the sore thumb that just makes everything else not add up. So we've got it's handwritten as opposed to typed.
Right, which is a little
strange
odd
and stupid.
And it's long. So you're giving the people like a lot of handwriting samples to go off of. Right?
To work with.
The paper was taken from a writing pad that was in Patsy's desk.
Yeah,
the
that's
pen,
one thing we didn't talk about yet.
Oh, I don't think we did. We mentioned it. We might have glazed over it. But that the paper was taken from that pad.
Yep.
And some people have said like, well, maybe somebody who had come to the house before for like a party or something had like taken the paper and then brought it back with a note.
Come on. In what world? That makes absolutely no sense.
I mean, it's possible. I don't think it's probable because they also used the pen. The pen was used that was found in the Ramsey home underneath the telephone. So this pen was there. There was 2 practice notes found.
Yep.
Somebody had started writing Mr. and Mrs. and then it said just a line, like an I maybe, but it could have been the beginning of a capital R.
Yeah.
So why does a kidnapper have to practice their ransom note? Maybe because you're trying to make your handwriting look different and it didn't look different enough.
Yeah.
And some lines from the note and the tone of the writing were taken directly from movies like Dirty Harry and Speed. Like I said, this is just drama stuff. This isn't how real people talk. It's how movie people talk.
Exactly.
The perpetrator wrote a very long ransom note for a child who's probably already dead using the family's own materials. And it probably took about, I would say, 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, that was a long ass note.
You're just sitting there. Like, where are you sitting at the counter eating some pineapple and milk and, writing the ransom note
Having
out?
your iced tea.
Yes. And $118,000 is a weird number. We talked about that. Same amount as John's Christmas bonus. Not many people knew about that bonus. I think that the Whites did. Fleet and Priscilla did. And they were one of the ones who had initially brought it up to Linda Arndt. They were like, it's kind of weird. Like, that's the exact amount.
Yeah.
It's definitely weird. I don't think any random person off of the street, any random neighborhood pedophile would know that. And unless they got lucky by asking for that number, which, what are the odds of that? I'm not a statistician, but low.
And why would they ask for his numbers for the bonus specifically? That makes no sense. This guy has tons of money. Why wouldn't you ask for way more than that? Just doesn't
I mean,
add
that's
up.
the biggest thing. I was thinking
Like,
somebody
how
could have
convenient
snooped
to
the
ask for
house,
that.
seen one of John's pay stubs potentially or something like that.
John doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's just leaving that stuff around, though, right?
And why are they like, let's find a good amount for him? Like, let's go off his
What's
bonus.
a convenient
that
amount?
would work.
Yeah.
It won't break him, but it'll teach him a lesson.
Yeah.
And, John's company was bought by Lockheed Martin. So that is a government company. I believe it's like one of those, don't they make like weapons and stuff?
Yeah. They do.
Yeah, they're a government
work with
contractor for Department of Defense. Yeah.
So maybe whoever wrote this note, we used the bonus to almost connect it to John's work at Axis Graphics. Like, it's a military-owned company now. this foreign faction doesn't like the country that John works for, and they don't like what he does, and he's a fat cat, so we're going to ask for the bonus. Like we have information, inside information on his bonus because we are a foreign faction and we have access to all of that stuff. That may have been the
thought
process.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense and it's dumb.
Yeah.
So they still wouldn't care. They wouldn't
It's
be
unnecessary.
like, we're only going to ask for 118, so you know that we know your bonus. Like, that's stupid. No one's going to do that. No, not any smart foreign faction.
Make
at least.
it easy for you.
Ask for $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, seriously.
And that obviously, that's a small ransom for a kidnapping and potential murder of a child. That's small for anybody, much less a family that was well known to have far greater resources than that. And the ransom note is, again, it's long, unnecessarily detailed, repetitive, dramatic. Like there was a bunch of stuff in there that didn't need to be in there. And investigators determined that it would have taken about 21 and a half minutes to write. Whoa, I was thinking 5 to 7 minutes, but all right, 21 and a half minutes. And that's if the note was copied and not thought out already. So like if they just knew what they were going to say already,
right?
But if they had to come up with it on the fly,
So a serious amount of
and
time
thinking
was put
it
into
through,
that.
especially if it was the parents and they had just gone through a traumatic event, it probably would take a little longer to form it, or they rushed.
And it's probably why it sounded so scattered, because at that point they're already writing it. They're not typing it. And if John was like, or somebody who was with the person writing the note was like, that sounds stupid. That line, that fat cat line, that's stupid. And then the other person would be like, well, John, it's already in there. How are we going to take it out? So we're just going to leave it.
We got to go with it now. We're committed, or we have to start all over.
Yeah. And the killer would have had to search the house for the materials. They would have had to sit down and practice the letter twice, write the ransom note, neatly place the letter on the staircase, put the pad neatly back in Patsy's desk. And that's the thing. Everything was put back in its place. The pen was put back in its place. The pad was. If you were writing the ransom note, you wouldn't want to put that stuff back.
You'd probably
wouldn't
take
care.
it with you.
No. Yeah, or you just leave it there. You wouldn't care.
Yeah.
You'd be like, yeah, we used your pad. What are you going to do about it? But if you don't want people to know that it came from that pad, you're going to put everything back where it came from.
Stupid move from them, though, if that really is the case and they did this allegedly.
Well, they're not career criminals,
Yeah, that's true. But
They
like
could be
you
with
think
enough
of just
practice.
like common sense, get rid of it somewhere, somehow. I mean, I guess that's hard because they don't want to like leave footprints outside, and
they probably don't want to leave the house. They don't want to do anything that could be seen from the
Right.
outside that's out of their normal behavior.
Right. Yep.
And they did try to get fingerprint, because I'm like, why didn't they get DNA or fingerprints off of the pen? But again, it wouldn't necessarily say
Wouldn't matter.
who wrote the letter. I mean,
Patsy's
anybody
pen.
could have touched
Anyone
it. So.
could have used that pen at any point.
And you'd think if somebody was from a foreign faction, they'd at least have gloves on when they're writing the note, so they wouldn't leave anything anyways.
Yeah.
And so they did all this, all at the same crime scene, right before or after murdering a child, without waking anyone up or leaving any other evidence. If these were kidnappers with any sort of like the plan or ability to monitor the Ramseys, kidnap their child, plan to collect their money, and murder a child in her own house without detection, then they'd sure as shit think to write a concise ransom note beforehand. And this is another thing. Like, they must have been monitoring. They knew where she was. It's not like they didn't turn lights on. The lights are all off.
No, they knew exactly where to go.
They knew exactly where to go. It's not like they were like, bumping around the house looking for JonBenét's room, opening up doors like, oh, that's you, Burke? Sorry, my bad. Looking for JonBenét, and then keep going. They knew where her room was. So they were watching for a while, or there's no foreign faction.
Right.
It clearly wasn't a ransom note. JonBenét was literally, she's already dead before it was written, or she was at least about to be killed. We obviously don't know the order. And there was nothing to gain money-wise from a kidnapping. Why would a person who knew this go to the trouble of writing a detailed note and risk getting caught? Also, the body was still in the home. The family would have probably discovered her quickly enough to not send the money. So why would they think that they were going to
the whole purpose?
Why wouldn't they have taken her out, the foreign faction? Even if they killed her in the house, why wouldn't they have taken her? So at least they have a chance of getting their ransom.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
doesn't
what's
make
the
any
point
sense.
of the entire thing?
0 point. The letter tries to show that English is not the author's first language. I did get that too. It does have grammar and spelling mistakes, and I thought maybe somebody's trying to make it seem as if
definitely trying to make it seem like somebody from a foreign faction actually wrote the letter. But I was like, if somebody from there would have been probably more, or even I don't know, there would have been more references to
the sentence structure would have been different. Different languages have different sentence structures.
Right.
Like certain words come before words, like we're in English.
Yes.
It's one way, but in many other languages, there's actually things switched around.
Yep.
So it wouldn't have been like this. And I don't think,
especially with how quick they were writing it and on the spot in the house.
And it was just like that first few sentences that seems like that, like they were actually writing it from a foreign perspective, and then it naturally goes back into English, like how we'd all write.
Talk about fat cats and stuff.
It's like,
the good Southern, what
Where
are
is
they, the
that
good
from?
Southern wisdom or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what foreign
That's
faction
not
would say that?
Yeah, that's a good point. The Southern wisdom thing makes
I forget
absolutely
what they
no
said.
sense.
Southern common sense or something,
Yeah.
but
They probably don't even know that exists. Like, why would they even bring that up? That's weird.
and
very
I
strange.
don't see them speaking that way.
Yeah.
It's just too dramatic. It's literally written for a movie. So there's like scratch outs, grammar, spelling mistakes. But then after the first paragraph, the author falls back into a natural writing style consistent with English as the native language, with no spelling or grammar errors and perfect punctuation, sentence structure. The linguistic profile of the author said that they had high writing ability, maybe like somebody who had a degree in journalism from a university. Native language was English, 30 plus in age, and suspected gender female.
Who does that fit? All of those things.
Linda Arndt? No. A handwriting expert concluded in the year 2000, after 3 weeks of studying the note, that Patsy Ramsey was most likely the author of the note. There's over 200 similarities between the note and Patsy's handwriting. Now, of course, just like when you get people in court and trials, you got witnesses, and the prosecution's witness is like, this is absolutely what happened, and the defense is like, no. It's like they all see things different, subjective, but there's other experts who are split on whether or not Patsy authored the note,
which is just naturally going to happen.
I would
with
hope
handwriting and stuff like that.
And it's not a science, the handwriting. It's obviously, I think one of the handwriting experts said that it looked like for the first couple of paragraphs, somebody had tried to write with their non-dominant hand.
Yeah, to kind of throw them off, and then gave up because they were running out of time.
It's got a little bit of a more like uneasy sort of flow to it, just the way the lines are drawn.
And everyone knows if you're trying to disguise your handwriting, you write with your non-dominant hand. But then Patsy, whoever wrote the note, they were like, this is hard.
This is getting hard. It's cramping up.
I shouldn't have written such a long ransom note.
Yeah. A little overcommitment there. So let's go back to the 911 call for a second. The 911 call is obviously a very strange point of all of this. It's very weird. It's hard to actually determine what is being said in that time after she had hung up the phone.
Or thought she hung up the phone.
Right. Thought she hung up the phone. And the 911 operator stayed on the line because she heard the voices and she thought the call was suspicious right away. She said that she believed Patsy sounded rehearsed on the phone and that her tone switched after she thought she had hung up the phone.
It did. It was a very clear switch.
It was.
It's hard to argue.
Like from
that.
panic to like level.
Yep. And it did seem incredibly rehearsed. The 911 operator couldn't talk about the call. She was placed under a gag order, and she was never called to testify before a grand jury or asked about her opinion on the call. And you gotta wonder why. A 911 call is obviously your lifeline in this situation, and most people stay on the line until police arrive. So why would Patsy try to hang up so quickly? Plus, the hastiness in the calling the police after the letter specifically stated it would cost JonBenét her life is odd. Which we did speak about that earlier as well. So if it were you would call.
You wouldn't call. I would not call, no. And, I went on the podcast when we covered this on Crime Weekly, Derek asked me the same question, which is why I asked you guys. And I'd never thought about it like that. And it took me a minute. I was like, no, I wouldn't call. And then I was like, maybe I would. No, I wouldn't. Maybe I would.
It's hard to say what you would do in that situation.
I went back and forth for a while. And I still wouldn't say for sure.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't call my friends. And if I did call the police, I'd be like, yo, be like on the down low about it. Like, don't wear a freaking police out uniform. Don't show up at my house in a police uniform. Look undercover, maybe just look like a delivery guy or something. Like something to keep this low key.
Or at least mention it to
She didn't say to the 911 operator, they told me not to call the police. So can we keep this low key?
That's incredibly strange.
Yeah.
I mean, unless she didn't read the entire note, to play devil's advocate here. Like maybe she only read the first part, realized JonBenét was gone, and quickly made the phone call.
But she got to Victory SBTC.
That's true. That's
she
true.
Knew that.
Or she just looked who
it
was from. Yeah, she could skip to the end.
But it's highly unlikely.
I think it's unlikely. Like I said, just playing devil's advocate.
But there's
I'm glad you are.
It's hard to in this case. But
it is.
And then let's not forget all the sketchiness surrounding the discovery of JonBenét's body. Because remember, John Ramsey was unaccounted for 90 minutes. Detective Arndt told John to search the house with her starting at the top, but John immediately grabbed Fleet and they headed to the basement. And they only had to search the basement for about a minute before he opened the wine cellar and found JonBenét.
Mm-hmm.
And again, John immediately saw JonBenét before he even turned on the lights. Again, it must have been pretty dark in there with no windows, very little light coming from under the door. So how did he know that JonBenét was laying on the floor? And she was also covered in a sheet. So just such a weird thing there. John also claimed in the 1997 police interview that he doesn't remember when or if he turned on the lights. There was also no footprints in the snow, although the path towards the basement window may not have been fully covered in snow to begin with. Several of the doors and windows were unlocked that night, and the alarm was not armed.
Mm-hmm.
Alarm disarmed was normal for them, and the killer would not have had to break in.
Yeah, because they
Right.
didn't set their alarm that night. And I think that's actually pretty common. You know, I think sometimes people are like, I have an alarm system and a sign that says I do.
Yeah.
So that's probably
Means
enough.
it's on all
That's
the time.
enough. It's just an app, guys. Like, you just open your phone, you freaking arm it. Come on.
Yeah, that's so true.
Why pay for it if you're not going to use it?
Probably one of the sketchiest pieces to the discovery of the body is the fact that John called the airport hours after he found his daughter and asked them to have a plane ready for him so that he could leave. And he admitted to this. And again, he said he was flying back to Atlanta, where he was clearly from, but also because he said he had some work appointment or meeting or something like that.
That is nuts.
But literally, he
is-
just found his daughter murdered.
Come on. No way. You just wanted to get the hell out of there.
You got some balls, right?
Yeah.
No
Major.
one else in the history of the world would be like, my daughter's just found dead in my house. It's okay for me to leave the state.
Right. And most parents, if they were in this situation, wouldn't even remember that they had a business meeting, wouldn't even be thinking about what else was on their schedule that day. Everything would be about their child in that moment and assisting the police, not leaving as soon as you can.
And they were supposed to fly to Michigan that day. So what business meeting did he have in Atlanta where he was flying to Michigan?
What business meeting, though, is happening the day after Christmas for a wealthy family who probably normally takes that time off?
He didn't have no
That's so
business
strange.
meeting.
No,
Absolutely not.
The CEO of the company is not working the day after
Plus,
Christmas.
if he really did, wouldn't we know more about it? Wouldn't he have offered up more details about what it was, why it was so important? I mean,
I think he wanted to meet with his lawyer. I really do.
no, it's clearly. And he just wanted to get the hell out of there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our thoughts and theories in this case. It's very hard. I mean, like I said, my theory originally years ago when we first recorded this podcast was that Burke did this, that it was some type of cover up. I thought maybe the pineapple made sense. Maybe they were fighting over the pineapple. JonBenét grabs a piece out of his bowl, something like that. He picks up this flashlight that's in the kitchen as well,
Right.
hits her with it, and the parents try to cover it up to protect him. That's what made the most sense to me before. The more I've learned about true crime since and seeing the autopsy photos, I hadn't ever seen them before. And I mean, it's
a brutal
horrific
murder.
to see.
It's a brutal murder.
Yeah. I mean, her skull was cracked just all the way around. And to think a 9-year-old could have done that, had that force, that's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. It's even more hard to believe that afterwards that he would use that garrote.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, I mean, my thought was always that he did the initial, hit her in the head. And then the parents kind of staged everything else to make it look like some intruder came in. I don't think
why?
Burke would have done the garrote and everything.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Why protect Burke's a kid? It's not like
Because-
what's the worst that could happen though?
His life's ruined.
Yeah. And people that
Well,
do theorize that
is
this
he gonna-
is the case, they believe that they were already losing one child. Why would they want to lose both children?
But they're
at
not
once?
going to necessarily lose Burke. They have tons of money. They can get the best lawyers, defense lawyers for him, and he's a minor, so he's not going to get charged as an adult for this. This is a
No, that's a good point.
You
But
know
it
what I
looks
mean?
bad for them.
It does
They
look
care
bad for them.
about their image.
Right.
Their image is, we are the perfect family. We look like the perfect family. Therefore, we are the perfect family. And we know that no family's perfect. Just like those pictures we see on Instagram where we're like, man, bitch, you got a nice house. It's all clean all the time. And then you look around, you're like, I feel like shit about my house. My freaking laundry beads aren't like in little glass jars. They're just
my Oreos aren't stacked in a container.
They're
In a
just in
perfect
the
little
laundry
pattern.
bead thing, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I suck and this person's awesome. That's what Patsy, I don't know so much about John. I'm sure he didn't give a shit either
Well,
way.
he
but
wasn't
Patsy,
there either.
He wasn't there. He was like, yeah, do whatever you want, lady. Patsy wanted people so badly to like envy her and want to be her and just be like the, you know, keeping up with the Joneses. So how much are you going to try to keep up with the Joneses when your little, 9-year-old son's a psychopath and killed your other child?
And that happened on your watch,
It's
or
hard.
maybe they were worried that he'd be taken from them.
he'd probably have to do something, but
yeah,
it's hard for normal people to understand how obsessed people like Patsy Ramsey can become with image, to the point where it's literally the reality for them as well. Like that's the reality. And if anything cracks, or if I see cracks, I need to patch them as soon as possible, because I can't ever let anybody see that anything is less than beautiful and pristine under the surface.
No, that's a good point. So do you believe there's a chance it could have been Burke that at least initiated the entire incident?
I believe that there is a chance that Burke may have initiated the incident. He did say he got up in the middle of the night to play with his toys. The pineapple and the iced tea were on the counter. Yeah, he seems to have maybe a little bit of a temper, you know, and I don't know how stable he is. Plays a lot of video games, and I don't think video games make you violent, because I like to play video games, and I'm not out there smacking people on the head with flashlights. But when he was talking to the psychologist, he was like, I don't know, maybe she got stabbed or hit over the head with a hammer. You know, he's so casual about it. It's not even like registering with him that this is happening to his sister. So I do sometimes think that these kids could snap. And
he had hit her with the golf club before. They said it was an accident, but
that was an accident.
Yeah,
how do you accidentally hit someone in the face with a golf club, man?
I mean, it definitely happens.
So with that, you think that Burke initiated this whole thing to go down, and then they thought that because she was bleeding from her head that she was going to die, and therefore they needed to finish the job. Like, I'm having a hard time.
Well, she might have been knocked out. I'm not saying that this happened.
Well, why not just no, I know. But
he was like, so you think, and I'm like, you stop trying to catch me up.
I say that too. Like,
he stopped trying to catch me up.
Sneaky,
I probably
right?
believe that more than.
So what
Stephanie
you're
does.
saying is, I think that, well, first of all, initially when it happens, right? She may have been unconscious, so they may have thought, and there's a lot of blood. Like, I don't know if you've ever been hit on the head, but I've been hit on the head before. It bleeds like crazy. And then underneath, you're like, oh, that's not so bad, but it bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. So they may have been like, she's dead. Look at all the blood under her head. Look at like
she's unconscious.
How deep this cut is. So then they were staging it, not knowing that she was still alive. And when she came to, I don't know.
But wouldn't it be easier just to be like, she slipped and fell in the bathroom and put some water on the floor and lay her in the bathroom and say she hit her head?
There's going to be an investigation. They're going to be able to tell that wound didn't come from the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely. They would not be able to.
But isn't it easier to, rather than stage a kidnapping murder, to stage an accidental death? You know, you can get rid of the flashlight and just have her lay down somewhere. Have her at the bottom of the staircase.
No, because that's suspicious.
Yeah, they will figure it out. They
It's
will be able to.
suspicious that there's a garage in the basement.
Not if there's a foreign faction coming in taking her.
Exactly.
I don't know.
They would be able to
Why
determine whether or
jump
not
to
that
that?
injury matches. They clearly know that this had to be from a blunt force trauma, right?
Right, blunt force trauma to the
from
head.
slipping on the bathroom or
You could-
slipping down the stairs. That is easy to debunk, and they probably would have known that.
When they do the autopsy, like the ME is going to be able to tell, was this an
Yeah.
accident or a homicide?
Right.
By
They
the
can
force of the wound, like the way it was, the forcefulness that whatever was hit her with was brought down.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that, oh my God. I mean, like you said, her head was split open.
I guess I see that from a forensic perspective, that based on the wound, that you would determine that there was some type of blunt force object versus hitting the ground.
Yeah.
So they figured that they'd have to stage a murder because that's the level of wound that she had on her head. But I'm just like, why go to, like, the first thing that came to their mind was go to kidnapping murder? Like, that was their first thought.
I mean,
what would your first thought be if you wanted to cover it up?
good
What
question.
story would you come up with?
I mean, I would have removed her body. Like, if that was the route I was going to go, I'd remove her from the house completely.
But here's the problem with that. Then your footprint is going to be outside. There's
chance of people
seeing you. And where exactly are you going to put her? Your DNA is going to be all over her body.
Or at least put her in a like vehicle or something other than just
what
that.
vehicle? Yours?
Yeah.
That looks even worse.
No, because then what if they search your vehicles?
Yeah. And it's yours and you're the only one who has the keys.
The
so-
foreign faction left her in my SUV.
Yeah. Plus, they're, like I said before, if this is a cover up, they're not going to be thinking this through that clearly. It's not like it was a planned thing. If it was an accident that turned into a cover up, they're going to have hours to react and set this up. So their thinking isn't going to be as clear as like a murderer who's going to plan this out in advance.
I'm just like, my whole thing is, why protect Burke? so much.
Because he's their child. Like,
but JonBenét, like Patsy's living through JonBenét.
Well, maybe she had jealousy about JonBenét. I mean, a lot of people who are living vicariously through their kids end up doing all kinds of fucked up things to them and being jealous of them. And
I don't think it was about either of them. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I don't
about
think they give a
protecting
crap
her
about.
image.
Yeah, I don't think they really give a crap about
they're
either.
that selfish and evil that they were just like, screw our kids.
Definitely
It's
that's
possible.
selfish.
It's
Definitely
possible.
that I think we live a certain way for so long. And I mean, remember, Patsy was in beauty pageants from like a young age as well. So
Which is all about your image and being
all about
judged
image.
and how you're perceived. So that's what she's thinking. That's
So
what she's wired
they
to
don't
think.
want to have a child that
they don't want to be the
ends
parents
up in
that
the-
has one
the-
child dead and the other's a murderer. Because then everybody, and I mean, I would do it too. I'd be like, well, what the hell did you do wrong, man?
Oh, yeah. People are going to be looking at you first for sure.
You're
And
not
they would
getting
go
invited to
down.
parties no more. Nope.
Nope. And with Boulder being, not having very many incidents like this, they know that this is going to be
I mean,
out
this would
there.
be a scandal, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Boulder's relatively small too.
Very small,
Yeah.
insular, everyone knows everyone kind of thing. Everyone knew the Ramseys. She
Oh,
loved
yeah.
that. She loved like walking into a women's clothing store and the clerks would be like, oh, Patsy, like, what do you want today? And walking into a cafe and, oh, Patsy, here's your normal. How are you? I love your beautiful family. Oh my God, you're the perfect mother. She loved it, man. She freaking survived on it.
Yep.
She doesn't need food and water. She needs applause and accolades. Like it's real bad. And I don't even blame her necessarily. She's conditioned to be that way. Who knows what's
Yeah.
going on with her family? We don't know how far going back this whole image obsessed thing really does go. But I don't think she cared about, saving Burke because, like, you're right. He wouldn't go to prison. He's a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever going to look the same. John's company was bought out by, a different company. He was kept on as the CEO. But when this happens, how long is he going to be kept on the CEO?
But
They
they
lose
could
everything.
have put the blame on Burke. Like they could just
Doesn't matter.
completely-
It's about how it looks. That the company's not going to want their CEO to be the father of a murdering little boy.
Right.
It's just
He's a
too much.
9-year-old. What did you guys do to make him
But
like
why
this?
not? Why not get emergency services there and try to save JonBenét?
Because then it all comes out.
Well, not,
And they
I mean,
could have
not
thought she was already
necessarily.
dead.
I mean,
I think
I
if
mean,
this is what happened, I
yeah.
think they thought she was
yeah,
already
they-
dead.
I think they clearly did.
And then what happens? She's waking up as you're strangling her. You're going to stop and be like, oh, baby, you're alive. No, because now the cops are going to bring her
Yeah.
to the emergency room and they're going to ask her, what happened? I woke up and my
mom
mother
was-
was strangling me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The more we're talking about this now, I'm starting to think maybe it really was Burke.
And now you've
that
got
started
the ligature marks too. So how are you going to explain that away?
Yeah.
Now you've dug yourself into a hole you can't get out of.
Damn, now I'm back to my original theory from 5 years ago. I don't know. It's hard to think that he could have had enough force to really crack her skull, but maybe he
I
did.
agree. It's hard for me to think he had enough force to do that.
Yeah.
And where was JonBenét when this happened? Like
What do you
when
mean?
she got her skull split?
I think the kitchen.
Yeah, a lot of people theorize it was the kitchen. That's where they were having the pineapple.
So
It's one of
she's
his favorite snacks.
sitting at the table, and Burke grabs a baseball
No, he's
bat.
sitting. He's sitting
no, not
at
a
the
baseball bat, a flashlight.
He's sitting at the counter of the table eating. She runs by. This was the CBS special
Yeah.
theory, right? He runs by. She runs by.
Grabs a piece.
Grabs a piece of pineapple.
He's
He flies
pissed.
into a rage.
Picks up the flashlight, smack, and it's a big one of those big black
The-
metal
The
I thought it was
mag
flashlights.
lights?
yeah, heavy duty.
like what cops have and stuff. The
Yeah.
heavy duty ones.
I don't know that theory. I always go back to that one. It
Or he
just
could have
makes
been in the
sense.
basement, right? He could have been in the basement playing with his toy trains and eating
Yeah.
the pineapple down there. And then she came down and started bugging him, and he wasn't paying any attention. I mean, I have 2 kids, 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. This is how they are. Now, not that they're like hitting each other with flashlights, but
Yeah.
this is how they are, man. My daughter annoys the hell out of my son so bad. He'll be playing with something and she'll walk over and be like, oh, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And he'll ignore her. He'll be like, go away, Bella. And then eventually she'll do something to get his attention, whether it's negative attention or positive,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Do something is going to bother them.
She'll do something to annoy him that she knows is going to cause him to turn around and look at her and acknowledge that she's there.
Yeah.
And that could have been what JonBenét was doing. Like, she's like, can I play with you, Burke? What are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, go away. Go back to bed, baby. I'm playing by myself. And then she won and like poked him or grabbed a pineapple, and then he lost it because
The only thing I struggle with is if that is the case, wouldn't there be blood everywhere from him hitting her? Wouldn't it be on?
Wouldn't there be blood spatter?
Was there carpet in the basement? Most basements have carpet.
Did they even? I don't even know if they did blood spatter analysis in this case. I don't think they
I don't
did.
think there was any blood. Like, it
but
clearly,
that's the thing is the
where
wound,
did the blood go from the head wound?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's
there may not have been that much blood. That's the thing is like the initial the wound is like
that was gnarly.
Everything that I've read said that there wasn't that much blood from this wound. That the crack would be shown.
Maybe there's not that
was
much, but there's got to be
fractured
some.
skull. But the actual wound where blood was coming out wasn't all that big. So there would have been a little bit of blood, but not enough to like go splatter everywhere. And also there is no trace evidence of Burke or anybody taken from the flashlight. That's what I just don't get is there's no evidence.
Yeah, but they also said they never saw that flashlight. They're like, I don't know whose flashlight that is. Why would they be saying they don't know whose flashlight that is?
Yeah.
If it hadn't been possibly and potentially used. I mean, because it's not your flashlight? Like, it's in your house.
I think they're trying to make it
the
seem
paintbrush.
Like the foreign faction that left it there.
The paintbrush was but the paintbrush was in your house. So you acknowledge that.
Yep.
Why not the flashlight?
Yeah, that's incredible.
They did find out that the flashlight, based upon the size of it, would fit the wound on the head. The fracture is consistent with the flashlight.
But could a 9-year-old have executed that?
Right.
Well, during the CBS special, I think it was Dr. Henry Lee, who I love. He's so great with forensics. He did. He took like a mannequin, a dummy, and revisited. What do they call it?
Yeah, I remember
Recreated
them hitting it over and over. Yes, I remember that scene now. Mm-hmm.
And I think that they decided that it was possible.
Did they have a 9-year-old come in and try?
I forget how they. Yeah, I forget how they ended up figuring out that he could have possibly done it, but I'm just wondering, like, where was the crime scene? Where was she actually murdered?
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
It's crazy. We still just don't know.
Because it couldn't have been the wine cellar.
No.
So the whole theory with Patsy is that she got upset and enraged by the bedwetting situation, and that she slammed JonBenét's head into like the tub or something like that. But there would be some evidence of that sort of injury on the side of a bathtub in that case, and there's not.
Unless you
clean it up, which again, that is possible, and maybe that just was missed, or they managed to get rid of any sort of evidence of cleaning up. But because again, there was clearly hours between the death and.
That is true, but if nobody went to sleep that night, Patsy's still wearing a full face of makeup. Patsy's still wearing the same clothes she wore the night before to the White's Christmas party. It may have happened shortly after coming home. And then you needed that time to write the ransom letter, to clean up a potential crime scene, etc.
Could he have thrown the flashlight? Like,
that's what I was thinking.
Like, just like, chucked it at her or something.
Or dropped it on her from
I was
above,
thinking about that too.
And it's obviously going to pick up force.
Right. Dropped it on her, threw it at her. Because, I mean, yeah, he's 9, but still, if you have a big-ass heavy piece of metal and you fling it at someone, you chuck it at someone, that's going to do some damage.
So this one site I'm reading, it says the blood under the scalp was a fresh bleed, not a leak, and there was no inflammation of the surrounding tissue. A lack of active bleeding would suggest the blow occurred after the strangulation, and inflammation would have happened at the site of the blow if the child had lived a few more hours.
Right, so that's important to Burke's theory. Yeah, it's because clearly the strangulation happened.
Because you'd think if the head wound was first, there would have been a lot more blood.
Yeah. But that's not determined 100%, so I guess it's still
And it likely would have rendered JonBenét unconscious too. So I think that's the biggest point of contention is.
I mean, honestly, that goes more with the intruder theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the strangulation came first and the head wound came second, that goes more with the intruder theory.
Absolutely. What was John's involvement in this? Like, what do you think? There's a lot of talk of sexual assault and sexual abuse from John towards JonBenét, and that perhaps that was a motive for him to kill her. Again, how do you confirm that? There's no way to confirm that at all.
There's no way to confirm that. They did say chronic sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know who from.
We don't know who or when or it could have been anybody.
Obviously, your mind goes to the father because they're around them the most, but there's plenty of other people.
She did have an older brother.
Yeah.
She had older half brothers, things like that. You know.
That's a good point.
Uncles, I'm sure.
Do you think Burke?
It's possible.
Burke could be the one
that was doing the sexual abuse.
It's hard to think that way, but I guess it is possible.
Of course, it is possible. Yeah. Anything is possible, but
I mean, they're clearly not close siblings. I mean,
they are
the
not
way
close,
that they talk, he talks about her.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to care at all that she has died.
No sadness there at all.
Like, once again, I go back, I have a 10-year-old son. he and his sister do not get along most of the time, but he would have been sobbing. He would have been sobbing.
Oh, absolutely.
You might fight and like say, I hate my sister or whatever. But in this type of situation, I feel like there would be some sort of emotion.
He wouldn't have been able to talk about it.
Just to be a witness to something that horrific.
Yeah, it caused some type of emotion.
Right. Whether or not you did it, just the fact that you were there when it happened.
Could Burke have been doing something to JonBenét that night? And it kind of spiraled out of control?
It's possible.
That's the thing, is like any of these things are possible.
Because, I mean, going back to the 911 call and the words that are being said after she thinks it's hung up, and then Burke is now there, and, you know, they say that the police woke him up, and then there's John potentially saying, we're not speaking to you, and they're talking about what happened. It's just like there was clearly commotion going on between all three of them at the time of the 911 call. They're all like freaking out, trying to figure out what to do, what's going on. I mean, that's just my opinion of what I heard and what I'm thinking of when I think of what they might be doing at this time, that they're just frantic, freaking out. Burke is like, all these things happen really quickly. And I mean, maybe they wanted to protect Burke for whatever reason. And obviously the reason being they don't want anything bad to come out about their family and, you know, risk their lifestyle going away and all of that. And so they just went to the most extreme solution, I guess. I mean, it's really hard to believe that parents would do this.
Hard to
believe. I know.
It's hard to believe the brother did it. Hard to believe the parents did it. Hard to believe it was an intruder. Like, you can find flaws
let
in any...
me take you through the intruder theory, because this
let's look at that.
I think we all focus on the family, but let's consider the intruder theory for a minute. So JonBenét, obviously, she was in pageantry, and people come to those pageant events, so that opens up JonBenét as a potential target or victim for who knows how many different people.
That is really scary. So strangers can come and just watch these things. Like, you don't have to prove you're related to the participant.
No.
She didn't care where her applause came from as long as she got it.
That is terrifying.
And they do stuff in public areas too, malls. I mean, there's lots of venues where just anybody could be watching and you have no clue who's there.
Man, that is fucking scary.
So if we go back to March 1997, 3 months after the murder, the Boulder District Attorney decided to get help in solving the crime. And this is when he turned to a man named Lou Smith, who was a seasoned Colorado Springs homicide detective who had recently retired.
So Lou is super controversial in this case.
Yeah.
He is. But you can't dispute the fact, his experience. That's something that I think holds a lot of credibility to him that I don't think you really can take away from him. He was a highly successful detective who managed to solve 200 homicide cases.
Yeah, but like how? Career. In fact, I think that spotless record, because I think it was like every case.
Yeah, he
solved.
That's kind of hard to believe.
That sounds to me like,
you think there might be some...
Maybe you're manipulating facts and evidence to fit what you already wanted it to be.
Sure. Yeah, how is your success rate that high?
Yeah, we do know police do that. Oh. They get tunnel vision just like anyone else. They have biases and they have their own theories. And even if they're not purposely doing it, there's going to come a time where they come across evidence and they're like, this evidence doesn't really fit my theory. So we're just
ignore that.
We're just going to brush that under the rug and keep going. They don't think they're doing anything wrong because they truly believe that this is what happened.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So somebody with that high of a success rate actually makes me a little suspicious.
What does Derek think of Lou? I'm curious to know what his perspective is.
Explain who Derek is again for those who don't know.
Derek Levasseur, he was a retired police detective. He also had a show on Investigation Discovery called Breaking Homicide, and he is my podcast partner.
And he was also on Big Brother.
He's on Big Brother. Yeah, he won Big Brother.
I love that.
You know, we kind of went back and forth about the Lou Smith thing. He came from a place, he came from Boulder, right?
Colorado Springs.
Springs. Yeah. Far more murders, far more crime. He would have way more experience with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Than the
which would make sense for why they might call him up to Boulder and out of retirement. But again, he was retired too, which I think is a little, why bring in a retired cop? But I guess his reputation
preceded him.
His portfolio was enough to get him the job.
Derek, when we went over this theory, we both kind of found it a little difficult to believe. And there are like some really, and you're going to go over them, some really good things that you're like, oh, okay. But it doesn't explain away the other things. So he brings up new things and he's like, this is what happened, but it doesn't explain the other things that are standing out.
Right.
So he's not able to explain away the other things that were like, this is hard to get past. We can't really get past this, like the ransom note. So, he's good. He's smart, but I don't like that high of a success rate. I mean, it seems very manufactured almost.
Does Derek share that same opinion, or does he think he's credible and he has experience
if
to back
Derek did share
it up?
that opinion, he would never say it out loud. It's like a professional courtesy thing.
Sure. He's not gonna try to
He's
say
not gonna
whether or
try
not
to
that
burn
detective
bridges
is
and-
a
especially
good
now-
detective or not.
Yeah, especially now that the man has passed away.
Sure.
Like,
I see.
Not going to speak ill will towards him.
Yeah, if
I
he
got
can't
it.
defend himself or come forward and sort of like dispute what you say, he's not going to say anything.
So if you look at it very logically, though, 200. I mean, he's got 200 homicide cases that he won when they were prosecuted, and so if you take your perspective out of it, to the average person, that is obviously this guy has some sort of credibility and
He's
know
like
how
magic,
to
man.
solve
Lou
cases.
Schmidt always gets his guy.
Right.
Every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah, that really, I don't know.
So basically, Lou Schmidt was convinced that JonBenét had been murdered by an outside intruder. He believed that the Ramseys may have been targeted for ransom money since they were obviously very wealthy, which we've already pretty much established. He also was convinced that it had not been John or Patsy who had killed JonBenét. He did have a very close relationship with both of them, which I think is important to mention because obviously there might be some bias there. So according to Lou, he said that the window well, where this window where the intruder would have gone through, looked like it had been recently disturbed. Lou claimed that the police rejected a request to bring in police dogs to pick up a possible scent, and in the window well outside the house, Lou noticed that there were leaves and foam packing peanuts. He also saw leaves and packing peanuts inside the basement, and there was one 60 feet away in the room where JonBenét was found. He thought this was a sign that an intruder tracked the debris in when he came through the open window.
Or it blowed in through the open window.
Right. And I thought about that for a minute too. I was like, I've had window wells before and trash just collects in there.
It does because it's a hole.
It's a hole, wind blows, and it could be the neighbors packing peanuts and
Absolutely.
stuff. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody like brushed that in through the window. So I get that. He also said that there was a fresh print from a high-tech shoe near JonBenét's body. And this is highly contested as well. According to John Ramsey, he said the family never owned that brand of shoe, but I believe they did figure out that there was some family member, somebody who had come to the home that they knew that had the high-tech shoe. I mean, these are basically like hiking boots.
Mhm.
So it's like everybody in Boulder has a pair of hiking boots. So it could have been literally anybody. It doesn't necessarily mean an intruder. However, Patsy's interview with prosecutors from August 2000 seemingly contradicts this. It was revealed that two people, including Burke, provided prosecutors with evidence that he owned a pair of high-tech shoes. And after examining the autopsy photos, Lou noticed those unusual sets of abrasions on JonBenét's back and face. And he was the one who brought forth the theory that perhaps they were made by a stun gun. And so he went out and researched a bunch of different types of stun guns, and he eventually found one that fit the marks that was called the air taser. And based on this, he believed that the killer might have used a stun gun on a sleeping JonBenét before carrying her to the basement. This was how they rendered her unconscious, or at least kept her quiet to take her downstairs.
Why do they carry her to the basement and not outside the house?
Yeah, that's...
Why not just go right off the front?
You've got her stunned. You have what you want now.
Why make it harder on yourself to go through the basement
Yeah.
out that window?
Why don't you just walk out the door?
You never hear of that with kidnappings of someone.
You want to be out as quick as possible.
Mhm.
So what's the quickest
Not
way
leave
out
more
the
evidence
house?
behind.
It's
Yeah.
late at night. The likeliness of being seen. Maybe they thought that was the sneakiest way to get out of the house. I don't know, but John thought that was what was going on. Lou also showed some of the autopsy pictures to Arapahoe County coroner Dr. Michael Doberson, who had actually had previous experience with a case where somebody had, I believe, died from stun gun wounds. And at first, Dr. Doberson didn't think that the marks were from a stun gun. However, he said later on that the police never showed him Lou's photo comparisons comparing the back marks with the air taser's electrical contacts. And when he saw them, he said that he found Lou's theory interesting at the very least. He didn't say that it was 100% or anything like that, but he said, could be, maybe. Police suspected that JonBenét suffered a massive head injury before she was strangled in an attempt to cover up her death. But Lou believed otherwise. He believed that some of the marks on JonBenét's neck showed that she struggled while she was being strangled, which would mean JonBenét had been strangled before her skull was crushed because she had been fighting for her life. And Lou was the one that believed that the skull fracture didn't bleed a lot and that JonBenét had already been close to death when she had been hit. However, the lack of bleeding is not a sure sign that she was nearly dead from strangulation, as multiple forensic pathologists have stated that a lack of bleeding is not uncommon in injuries similar to JonBenét's head wound. Again, Lou Smith is not an expert in forensics, so him saying that these injuries are consistent with this or that really don't hold much merit. I mean, obviously there's pathologists and people who literally get doctorates in this type of field, so they're going to know more than Lou is going to know. But Lou is very adamant about the injuries.
Yeah, that's how he always gets his man.
Yeah, right. I see what you're saying. So Lou didn't. Yeah.
If you like have a square puzzle piece and you're like, this doesn't fit, let me shave some stuff off so it fits.
So he's kind of twisting the information and the facts to fit his narrative.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate the other side of it, like the potential of walkthrough of how it could have happened. But to just sit here and be like, this is absolutely what happened.
Yeah.
The Ramsey family had nothing to do with it. And he was allowed to say all of this in the grand jury.
Yeah.
And they still voted to indict.
Yep.
Very true.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And all the other forensic pathologists were like, nah, man, what are you talking about, Lou? Like, near unanimous that this was not what happened. And Lou was like, well, I have a doctor who say it is what happened. And we see that so much, I think, in courts and trials and stuff.
It's true. It's true. They find people who go along with their narrative in order to get the case closed because it looks good for them. I mean, there's definitely ego in police departments and with detectives and things like that. I mean, that's
the whole
what you're measured on. That's like your performance is measured on cases you close, cases prosecuted successfully. That's how DAs get reelected. That's how cops get promoted. I mean, it's a whole ladder. This to me is a little weird that just because I think it's pretty obvious that in the military, John Ramsey probably would have learned how to tie knots at the very least, but also to make a garrote. Yeah. I mean, that seems like it's a simple weapon that you can create in order to kill somebody. And that's something like
if you were in like hand-to-hand combat,
stuff, they probably teach you that in basic
They do.
training.
My brother was in the Marines, and obviously they teach you how to like fight as like a team, guns and stuff. But there are going to, especially like during Vietnam and stuff, when there was a lot of hand-to-hand combat on the ground. Yeah, you're going to have to often attack these people with your bare hands, and you're going to want to come out of that alive. So you're going to have to be,
or utilize anything around you, like a twig, or like take a stick and then take your shoelaces, and you could make a garrote that way. I'm pretty sure, like you could use almost anything to make one of those. So the fact that Lou's like, no, John wouldn't have known how to do that.
Look at this. I just typed it. Using the garrote, the USMC way.
Ah, there you go.
So this is clearly part of like
training,
military training.
Yep.
Wow.
Plus, it was made with items from their house.
Allegedly, though. Allegedly.
Oh, not the items from their house.
The items for their house is true.
Yes.
The fact that John made this garrote is 100 million% allegedly. Yes. We got you, John. Don't worry.
God, that documentary. I keep reading the name of it.
What really happened?
Pregnancy Brain.
Well,
what really happened?
That's why John's in it throughout it, because it's...
How dare you make a documentary saying what really happened when your theory explains none of the evidence that we've already come up that makes the intruder theory look like bullshit.
Yep, and it's so biased.
No, the ransom note's not even brought up.
And with how wealthy he is, don't you wonder if like maybe he...
funded it?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can fund...
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. We don't know for sure. There was also a baseball bat that was found in the bushes outside the house, and police found fibers from the same carpet on the bat. And Lou believed that the killer used it to hit JonBenét over the head. Why on earth would they leave that just laying outside in the bushes if that was the murder weapon? Any trained killer with enough know-how to go and enter a house and do a kidnapping and be from a foreign faction would definitely not just leave the murder weapon.
Not even an untrained pedophile would do that.
Yeah.
Right. That'd just be stupid.
The dumbest of the dumb would.
Was there blood on it? Was there flesh from her head?
There would have been.
Toss this, no.
What makes you think it was a murder weapon and not something Burke was playing with? Because it wasn't like snowing really much before that day. Like when JonBenét, she got a new bike for Christmas. She was out riding her bike outside on the 25th because it was unseasonably warm. It was nice out. There was no snow. Burke could have been outside playing with that damn baseball bat. And then because he's a disrespectful little asshole, he's like, we're done. And he throws it in the bushes.
Yeah. That's a great point.
That's totally possible. There's no way to prove either way.
Right. So obviously for the intruder theory, somebody likely had to have scoped out not only the outside of the house, but the inside of the house as well in order to get familiar with it before the murder. And Lou thought the intruder had broken in while the family was at the Whites on Christmas, which would have given that intruder time to write the ransom note on Patsy Ramsey's notepad. Again, there's John Ramsey was cleared of writing the note, but Patsy was never definitively cleared. And again, remember the experts believe there might be a good chance that it was Patsy that wrote that note.
Yeah.
According to Lou, focusing on the family at first was the right call, but he thought the police were too reluctant to investigate other theories. So,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
I
I think
that.
you got to, I mean, and that happens so much in investigations where police come in and they're like, it's glaringly obvious to us that it's this, so we're just going to go straight down this, but we're not going to even bother to rule out other possible
Happens all the time.
theories. Yeah. So it happens all the time.
That's a good point.
One thing to note, though, before Christmas in 1994, the Ramsey home was part of a 2-day home tour in Boulder, and Patsy estimated that over 1,500 people were in and out of that home during that tour. She also speculated that this might have been an open invite for a murderer to scope out the house.
Totally.
1994, though, right?
Right. So
wasn't it 2 years before?
Right.
The murderer waited 2 years?
Yeah.
They could have changed the house at that point.
Right.
They could have put a couch right in front of the door and you would have walked your ass into it.
Right.
How do you know? Why 2 years?
Why would you scope it out 2 hours before a murder?
2 years, yeah. Come
That
on.
doesn't happen.
And why you letting 1,500 strangers in your damn house?
Because show offs.
You leave them, you let them in your house, and then you don't set your alarm. You get children in that house. Your children live in that house. You're letting 1,500 strangers tramp through.
Stupid.
Who knows where that DNA came from at this point? They're just letting random people in.
Yep.
Very true.
It's wild.
She speculated that it might have been an open invite. Your open invite, lady.
Yeah.
Your open invite. You act like somebody was just like opened your door and we were like, come in, everyone. And you were like, no.
We had no control.
Oh, come on.
And this final point really, I think, hurts Lou's theory more so than it helps it, because 4 days before JonBenét's murder, John's business made the local news for grossing $1 billion in sales. So again, Lou's theory completely disregards lots of things, but the ransom note is the number one thing. And in the ransom note, $118,000. Well, why would that person ask for that when they just saw in the local newspaper that his company just made $1 billion?
He's going to talk about the ransom note.
Right. No, the ransom note, cobwebs, that whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, Lou thought somebody entered through that basement window and they used that suitcase to get out, and they panicked, killed JonBenét, potentially sexually assaulted her before leaving the scene. And
he also talks about the possibility that they were going to like try to take the suitcase out with them, and that it didn't fit through the window.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. But that window's pretty small, and I don't even know how somebody would have to be really strong to pick up a child and like
Hoist
pick them up,
and
push them through, and like get up and like drag them out, or it'd have been multiple. There would have been some sign.
Why would you do that?
Right.
Just walk out the door at this point. You're
Why go out a
inside the
window?
house, my friend. You don't have to get through locks now. You can walk out. It's just, it doesn't make it. And like, listen, is it possible? Yeah, of course it's possible. You could have had somebody who maybe wasn't completely mentally stable, and that's why you see all these stupid decisions being made.
Right.
That's possible. They just left no DNA behind or no sign that they were there.
Yeah.
And if they're not
They were
like mentally
sloppy
right
in
and
one
they're sloppy,
part, but not sloppy in the rest of it.
Yeah, that's what it just doesn't line up.
It doesn't.
And there were likely eyewitnesses somewhere seeing somebody peel out of their street, or hearing other sorts of sounds. Although there was a report that I think Lou said that a neighbor heard a scream from the basement, but then again, that doesn't mean that there's an intruder in the house.
And how many years later was he in on the
exactly.
case? So you're
Right.
expecting somebody to remember the exact night
Yeah.
that they heard a scream. Maybe it was a scream.
Or the grate from the window well slam on. It's
And you would remember that exact night.
Yeah.
Eyewitness testimony is already not very reliable to begin with. And then you add this is not even eyewitness. It's like you just heard something from your house. Could have been like an alley cat run up screaming up the street.
Totally.
Anything.
So with the intruder theory, there's got to be a suspect related to the home invasion. And there's been a couple suspects out there. In both 1995 and 1996, the Ramseys hired a man named Bill McReynolds to dress up as Santa for their annual Christmas party. And some people at the party thought that Bill had paid a little too much attention to JonBenét. He'd also taken JonBenét aside at the party and promised her that Santa was going to pay her a special visit that night. JonBenét had also given Bill a vial of gold glitter both years that he worked the party. Bill told his wife that when he died, he wanted his ashes mixed in with the glitter JonBenét gave him and spread it to the wind. Bill felt very close to JonBenét and was devastated by her death. While all this is weird, it seems very unlikely that Bill had anything to do with JonBenét's death.
Yes.
And his DNA didn't match.
It's totally weird, but I feel like he feels like, oh, this is my big kind of claim to fame is I'm somewhat connected to this family who's famous for this murder.
And he had like a strained relationship with his own children.
Yeah. He's just a strange dude. I mean, who knows what was going on there.
Yeah. Church came in contact with a lot of weirdos, honestly.
Right. There was a Boulder resident, Michael Helgoth, who killed himself on February 14, 1997, 2 days after Alex Hunter told the killer at the press conference that he would be caught. Michael had apparently made statements to a coworker that made him think that he had something to do with JonBenét's murder. There's some evidence that Michael may have actually been killed by an ex-girlfriend, actually. And DNA evidence cleared Michael, and there doesn't appear to be any evidence that Michael knew who JonBenet even was before she died.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a possibility that a man named Gary Oliva, who was a convicted pedophile that hung around the Ramsey's neighborhood, may have had something to do with JonBenét's death. He had an obsession with JonBenet, and he lived right down the street. Gary also attended a candlelight vigil for JonBenet after she died. And a friend of his said that Gary called him sobbing on the night of December 26, 1996, and told him that he hurt a little girl. 4 years after the murder, police arrested Gary on unrelated charges and found a photo of JonBenet and a stun gun. They also found that Gary had tried to strangle his mother with a telephone cord. And the knot on the telephone cord was the same knot that was used in the garrote that killed JonBenet. But Gary was later cleared by DNA, and Boulder Police Department has investigated Gary's multiple confessions, and it appears that they didn't find him credible, and they don't consider him a suspect.
Which is kind of hard because, of course, they seem kind of biased towards their theories. But yeah, it seems pretty unlikely.
Like with the intruder theory, that was my main thought, was that this was some type of pedophile killer that killed JonBenet. I mean, somebody who sexualized her and was obsessed with her and wanted to have her for himself, and it just went terribly wrong. So I guess Gary kind of fits that profile. But again, according to the Boulder Police Department, he was cleared by DNA.
Some people do believe that it was him, though.
There was something like he had made confessions, but some of the stuff in his confessions didn't line up with like the crime scene, what had actually happened. And we know there's weird people, I'll never get this, who just like tie themselves to cases and confess to them for some reason, and they had nothing to do with it. That is the weirdest thing to me.
Satisfaction, claim to fame, or just...
Yeah, but like what happens when you're behind bars, dude?
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, that brings us to John Mark Carr, a former school teacher and raging pedophile who confessed to killing JonBenet in 2006. He was living in Thailand on the run from the U.S. They were trying to arrest him for possession of child pornography. Later, police discovered that Carr was nowhere near Boulder at the time of the murder, so he completely made it up. I actually remember when that happened. Janelle, do you?
I remember it
We were in Green Hill together in Rhode Island when that happened.
No, I was at my house. I remember that.
Oh, then I was for sure in Rhode Island.
Really?
I just figured you were there too, since you were normally there. But yeah.
No, I remember it so clearly.
Yeah, it's super weird. But no, wasn't him. He had written a disturbing diary with entries about killing JonBenet, and he definitely was an evil and twisted man who wanted to somehow associate himself with JonBenet's murder, but it was not him. He was eventually released from jail, and he now lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest under a new name and gender. Plus, DNA evidence cleared each one of those suspects. However, it is important to note that this DNA may have been touch DNA, meaning that the sample may not be able to rule any of the suspects out.
There you go. That's very important.
Yeah.
Because I don't think she was actually sexually assaulted.
You don't?
I don't think that night that she was. Because
had been in the past.
Don't you think that there would have been more DNA found inside of her if that was the case?
Probably, but it's hard to say.
So that DNA means everything, or it means nothing. And that means if it doesn't rule out any of these guys, they could still be the person. And so could any of the other people whose DNA had been tested.
Yep. It could really be anyone. And some people have theorized that it's some type of disgruntled ex-employee of John's, someone from work.
I don't know, though. But I don't know anybody that why go after his daughter? Why don't you go after John?
Especially if he works with him, he knows how much money he's worth. Why would you ask for that little amount?
Yeah, that's so true.
And John did say, like, I think it was a couple years after, he said, you know, if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't have had her in pageants. Like, it's not a good idea to put your children on public display. That's, I think, what his exact quote was. It's not a good idea. What his exact quote was. It's not a good idea to put your children on public display.
Yeah. So the Ramseys have also suggested that it was an ex-nanny or housekeeper that could have been responsible, but both or all of the people that worked at their house were cleared. So any other thoughts as far as theories go? Like, is there one that you just feel makes the most sense? Like, I'm curious, Stephanie, if you believe Patsy more than, well, not believe them, but believe it could have been Patsy more than you believe it could have been Burke. Is there, I mean, that's what
It's so
I
hard.
feel
It's so
comfortable
hard.
saying that it was someone in the family. I don't think it was an intruder, in my personal opinion.
So
But
that's
I just
exactly
can't
where
figure
I'm
out
at.
who.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. Like, I don't think it was an intruder. And if it was, the case hasn't been made strong enough for me to jump on board that.
Right. Like, it's possible, but
Of course, but
doesn't make a
and
lot of sense.
Once again, that ransom letter is
Yeah.
always going to stick out to me and prevent me from moving past.
Yeah.
This was an inside job.
200 similarities to her handwriting. I mean,
Just its presence in general. Like,
Yeah.
is Gary Oliva sitting there and writing a ransom note like that?
No,
You don't
and-
know
Yeah.
how much John got from his bonus, you
and
know?
if you look at Gary's, he actually wrote his confession out on paper, and when you look at his writing,
Not
it
even close.
doesn't look anywhere near. Even if he wrote with his non-dominant
Non-dominant
hand,
hand,
it's
yeah.
just be way too hard to get
I
close
agree.
to the ransom. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. I think I was really intrigued by the intruder theory, especially just the garage and everything like that. But the ransom note just really throws a complete curveball to that theory. Just
And their
there's-
behavior afterward.
yeah,
you
the
know?
behavior, the calling for a plane, and just rushing out of there.
calling friends over. Yeah, it's all super.
It's really
weird.
hard to move past that. So
Yeah, I think we are all kind of, but that's cool. You know, we all kind of ended up on the same page. We still
Yeah.
don't know the why or the who.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever will.
I still kind of lean towards Burke did something, they covered it up. That just makes sense to me. But I don't know. I mean, would we have seen more abuse from Patsy and John if they were the ones who initiated and just did this, just decided to murder her or one of them?
Oh, I would never go as far as to say like this was just something they decided to do one day.
Yeah.
Like something
I don't think so either.
happened
There was an incident and it was covered up.
to make it feel like this was their only way out. Like this was their only option.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I just don't know what.
Or who started it.
Mm-mm. But I definitely think Burke was awake when that 911 call was made.
I think so too.
Maybe he didn't say like, what did you find? You know, that could be just creative, like, you know, when they were, what do they call it? When they were fixing the sound? When they were enhancing
Yes.
the sound.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you can hear things that aren't there, but I think it's definitely his voice, and that's important.
Mm-hmm. It really does sound like a child's voice, and it's just so out of nowhere too. It doesn't match the rest of the sounds.
But just to be clear, the Ramsey family has maintained their innocence, and they believe that JonBenét's killer is still out there. And Patsy Ramsey, her cancer came back in 2002, and on June 24th, 2006, she died of ovarian cancer at the age of 49, and she's buried in Georgia next to JonBenét. And John ended up remarrying. And in 2008, Boulder DA Mary Lacey officially eliminated the Ramseys as suspects, and this decision was and is still highly controversial. Lacey exonerated the Ramseys after she sent JonBenét's long johns to a new DNA testing lab, and she found that the DNA belonged to an unidentified male. Again, this DNA sample faces the same issues that the underwear and fingernail DNA samples have. Multiple investigators involved in the case have stated that they highly disagree with Lacey's decision to exonerate the Ramseys. They believe that in order to exonerate them, Lacey would have to name a suspect, which she didn't do. The exoneration is also not legally binding. And as the years go on, DNA testing methods have been getting more and more advanced. And the Boulder Police Department is hopeful that some of these advancements can help match their samples to JonBenét's killer.
The problem is though, like there's such probably a small amount of DNA, and every time they test it, they have to like take a piece and it gets destroyed.
smaller and smaller.
But they do have that technology now where they're learning to sort of like replicate. They have like a machine or something where they can like replicate current DNA to make more
copies of it. Yeah.
And then use that for testing, which is very interesting. And if that's the case, like let's not test it right now. Let's wait until that's up and running and has been tested and is seen to be working accurately for a number of years before we do that. Because at this point, even if nobody gets prosecuted, even if nobody goes to prison, I think JonBenét would want us to know what happened to her.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree.
And so much is being hidden and sort of like swept under the rug right now.
Yep.
By multiple people.
Do you think that if we do finally learn the truth about this case, just in general, that we're going to find a cover-up being done by the Boulder County District Attorney's Office?
I think if we learn the truth about this case, it will be because they allowed us to know the truth. Therefore, we will not find out.
So it'll be a
cover-up.
censored version.
Yeah, it'll be like when they released the JFK papers and stuff.
Yeah, redacted.
It's like something happened, but wasn't us, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they'll say like, oh, this is actually what happened and this is who probably did it, but we won't tell you like why it went unsolved for so long.
There would be pieces missing for sure too.
But I personally do believe that there were people and agents and factors involved in this case that allowed evidence to be swept under the rug, that allowed, I mean, just the whole grand jury thing is so sketchy.
Yeah.
If Alex Hunter really believed that they were innocent and that it wasn't gonna, work if he tried to, press charges against them, why not just do it then? Then bring them to trial. If you think that they're not going to be found guilty, why do you have a problem bringing them to trial? That's not your decision. I mean, I guess it's technically his decision to make.
Yeah,
but you're not really worrying about.
What do you have to gain from it?
It's so unfair to her, to the American people.
It's unfair
to
JonBenét.
It's
You're
like
not
obstruction of justice.
You're not taking care of the victim, which is what the DA should be doing.
That's unreal, honestly.
Yeah,
it's hard
it is
to even
unreal.
wrap your mind around.
I bet you he's been promoted too.
Probably.
I bet you he's like the mayor now.
Mayor of Boulder.
The mayor
Alex
of Boulder.
Hunter.
Alex Hunter.
Yeah, let's see what he's up to.
Where is he now? He's 81 years old. Not on.
He's
been retired from the district attorney's office for approximately 18 years, and he is
not the mayor.
Non-party. Mr. Hunter normally spends November to May in Hawaii, and his plans to leave Colorado. Oh, how nice!
He's going to
how
Hawaii.
Nice. Where'd you get that much money on a district attorney's salary, man? You can spend all this time in Hawaii, man. He must have invested very well, really well, and planned for his retirement.
Or someone else invested
or
in him.
Or he got a nice donation from somebody, like a nice character who wanted to make sure that he was all set for life.
Allegedly.
Wow. Alex Hunter is known as the Law and Order Lock 'em Up Bulldog. Okay. Just not here.
Yeah, just not locking up these guys.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
And John Ramsey is 74 now, and he lives primarily in Moab, Utah.
Isn't that where Gabby Petito and
Yeah,
Ryan
those were
Laundrie
that-
were?
Yeah.
Yep. Moab.
Creepy. Sometimes I feel like we're living in a simulation. I swear.
Oh, don't
all
even get me
across-
started on simulation theory right
yeah, this
now.
podcast will never end.
We'll be here for another 3 hours.
Yeah, how
Someday.
long was this episode?
Someday.
I'm not sure. We've been sitting here a while.
Hours.
We're at 4.5 hours, but my guess is that
It's probably more like
after
3.
it's probably about 3.5.
Wow.
All right.
Well, I hope you guys enjoy this one. That's what happens when you have Stephanie Harlowe
I know, I'm
here.
so
We
sorry.
just talked. No,
I do this to everyone.
We're so grateful. So glad that you came out. This was
Yes.
so interesting. And yeah, Josh and I were going back and forth about all this last night. But after coming in and talking to you, kind of changed our thoughts a little bit. Like,
Well,
you have
I
some
didn't really
interesting
think about the
perspectives.
ransom note as hard as I probably should have when I was thinking about this last night.
Well,
And-
it's easy to get stuck on one thing and kind of forget the other details.
Mhm.
And that's the problem with these theories is there's something in every single one that makes it maybe not.
There's something in every single one that makes it possible, but then there's also something where you're like, but not if this is a factor. And that's
and you're like, oh,
frustrating.
it seems unlikely.
And that's why this is one of the most popular cases of all time and disputed.
And is
People
unsolved.
fully-
So.
I'm sure there will be a lot of different opinions in the comment section, some arguing back and forth about what you think. And yeah, we want to hear what you guys have to say about this case. Like, is there one theory that really makes sense to you? Do you lean a certain way? Have you ever wavered from it? If you've been interested in true crime for a while, have you ever been on one side of the case and then kind of switched to the other side, gone more with the intruder side? It's really hard. I mean, I feel like I'm back and forth with it all the time.
I mean, I
but I always
still
go back
think
to the family.
intruder is possible. Like, I still
Possible,
think it is
of course. They're
Anything
all
is possible.
because the fact that they haven't been able to match DNA to their own family is what just gets. I'm just like, how? Like, how did they not find any sort of DNA that matches directly to John, Patsy, or Burke in this whole incident?
I mean,
if
I
they
think
were
it's suspicious
involved?
that they didn't, right?
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's
And right,
suspicious,
maybe there and potentially there's more to that, and cover
That's
up is
what I
always
think.
an option. I mean, there's so many scenarios that could play out in this. But I mean, hopefully one day we'll get some answers. I mean,
I don't
for
think we
John
ever are
Benét's sake,
gonna
I
get
hope
answers.
we get the truth one day. I mean, you never say never. I mean, look at Golden State Killer. I mean, it could be 50 years from now. We could all be old in retirement
Everyone wanted to
homes and
solve that one.
John Benet
I think there are
solved.
people who don't want this one solved.
Yeah. And I think that like this case and Madeleine McCann, they're the two that like I feel like with Kaylee Anthony, I think I know what happened there. You know, I think we're all kind of aware.
Agree.
But John Benet and Madeleine McCann,
Mm-hmm.
their parents are so freaking sketchy, man. So sketchy.
Yeah, let's start by going over Madeleine McCann now. Let's
do that now.
Maybe we'll have to have you back for
Now I'm
Madeleine
so
McCann.
curious for what you think about that.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that off camera.
Yeah, they're so
It's getting
they're all,
really late.
everything's so sketchy in this. So it's like, I would love to know if people always ask, what's the one case that if you could know the outcome or you could know the answer to it, which would it be? And I go back and forth between John
Same.
Benet and Madeleine because something's weird there, something's off that doesn't add up. And why doesn't it add up? Because somebody wanted to make sure it didn't.
I normally answer JonBenét because I grew up with this case and I've just always been curious. It was like one of the cases that really sparked my interest in true crime. And yeah, I wish I knew the answer so bad. Like thinking about that night and the fact that somebody knows just drives me nuts, you know?
Somebody knows.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote that ransom note knows.
Yep.
They should not have put that ransom note there.
Yeah.
No.
We would not be sitting here talking about this if they could have just woken up and been like, my daughter's not in her bed.
Yeah.
I'm worried.
Yeah. They probably wouldn't have all the speculation. This case probably wouldn't be nearly as talked about and popular.
I'd be right on board that intruder theory. If, because
it really throws it off.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think.
Yes, please do. And thank you so much, Stephanie Harlowe, for coming on our show, coming all the way out to Colorado. It was so great to have you. You're always welcome here.
Of course.
And next time you should bring Derek. We want to meet Derek.
Yeah, I'll bring Derek next time. And then you come up to New York and visit. We'll hang out.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
I've never been to New York.
Oh, you'll love it.
I've got to come up.
And they live in a really beautiful area. So I was looking at the fall pics of,
the fall pics
your area, and I was like,
fall's gorgeous.
It looks beautiful.
I mean, haunted hayride.
Got to go to Salem too.
We love Salem.
Yeah.
Yeah. October might be a
do
good
a trip
time.
up there.
New England in like the fall, you can't beat it. It's so spooky and like old and kind of like, because it's like ancient.
All the old
There's like an
churches
energy in the air in October in New England, like New York and Boston, like Massachusetts. It's just so beautiful. Everything's crisp and it's kind of like a spooky vibe in the air. Like there's energy.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. People have always told me that. You've got to visit.
It's the best.
Fall.
Go back to where you were from.
Yeah, I was born in Boston. I lived there for like a year.
Yeah?
So I don't remember it, but I've been a few times to Boston, but I've never been to New York.
So you didn't get your Boston
accent? I had a Boston accent, but I'm pretty sure it was just like child accent. You know, how like some kids just have a Boston accent, because mine was pretty wild. I had a cat named Marley, and I'd always be like, Molly, Molly. What did I used to say to you, Janelle?
I don't know. Come on, Janelle. I think you just,
let's get in my car, Janelle.
Yeah.
At the dooryard.
Yeah, the yard. Yep. Yeah, I definitely had
love it.
something.
No one in Boston has a Boston accent anymore, though.
Really?
Yeah, no one. I met one guy in Boston when I was there who sounded like he was from Boston. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, man, the transplants, they're like pushing us out. They're making it expensive for us to live here. Like the people who were born there can't live in Boston now because everyone's coming from all over.
That's what we...
Gentrification.
Yeah. It seems like that's everyone's complaint everywhere, though, right?
Of course, and it sucks.
So you're not a diehard Patriots fan, are you?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
She's like looking at me.
Just want to make sure.
I'm looking at him like,
no.
friends. No.
Yeah, Janelle gets very angry about.
I'm just kidding.
No, I don't like football at all. Actually, I'm a college basketball fan. That's it.
Oh, that
nice.
I know nothing about. So
I like college basketball. I don't like NBA. College basketball. That's it.
What, like Syracuse?
Syracuse.
Yeah, that's your team.
My dad
Go
Yeah.
Even though they suck now. But yeah, we'll come back. Derek and I'll come back. And
please do. That'd be so fun to have both of you guys on. Maybe we can do Madeline McCann next time.
Maybe.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Dive in again.
Be awesome.
Well, we hope you guys liked this episode of the Mile Higher podcast. If you did, please make sure to leave us a thumbs up on YouTube. Give us a rating and review on iTunes. Can you do that on Spotify? I always forget.
They do now.
You
They
always
have
say
ratings.
iTunes. It's Apple Podcasts now. You can do it on Spotify as well. And then obviously make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you check out Stephanie's podcast, Crime Weekly.
Yes.
Really, really good stuff.
For the deepest.
The deep dives.
The deepest dives. Yep.
Stephanie, where can people find you on social media?
Yes.
So you can find me at Steph_Harlowe on Twitter, Stephanie Harlowe on Instagram. It's Crime Weekly Pod on everything. And on YouTube, I'm Stephanie Harlowe or Crime Weekly. And then on podcast, it's Crime Weekly.
Boom.
Awesome.
We'll link all that below, but that is it for us today. We will see you guys next week. And until then,
keep on taking your mind a mile higher.
Yeah.